Hey there. Tonight we're teleporting to a place so backwards, even your phone's calculator would be burned for witchcraft. Honestly, you wouldn't last an hour. Most of you would surrender at the first whiff of non-deodorized armpit. Survival rating. A single, lonely star clinging to the review like a drunk to closing time. So, before you fluff the pillows and negotiate with the cat for blanket real estate, do the YouTube boogie, smash that like button and subscribe. But only if my voice has ever rescued you from insomnia or your in-laws. Drop me a line in the comments, city and local time. I'm curious which corner of the planet is currently using my dulcet tones as background music for dish-washing or existential dread. Dim the lights. Cue the faint electric hum that sounds suspiciously like the universe clearing its throat, and let's tiptoe together into tonight's tale. Bring snacks. History is calorie-free, but the smells are not. You arrive in Rome at that slippery moment between afternoon and evening when the light can't decide whether to linger or leave. The sun has already tucked itself behind the 7 hills, but the heat, oh, the heat, clings to the stones like a guest who doesn't know when the party's over. You're standing in what used to be the Roman Forum, except nobody calls it that anymore. To the locals, it's just the cow field because that's what it's become, a grazing ground where a few bored-looking oxen chew weeds between fallen columns. The Temple of Vesta has lost its roof and gained a family of goats. The rostra, where Cicero once thundered, now serves as a climbing frame for children who have never heard his name. This is the 10th century, and the Eternal City has developed a habit of napping. The air smells of 2 things mostly, the Tiber, which is less a river and more a sluggish brown soup that's given up on flowing, and incense, which hangs in ribbons from the churches that still cling to the hills like barnacles. There's a third smell, too, but you can't quite place it, something between wet wool and the metallic tang of old coins. You'll later learn it's the scent of a city that's been sweating through its clothes for a few hundred years without a proper wash. For now, you just breathe it in, because there's no alternative, and because every breath makes this place feel a little more real. Your feet are on cobblestones that were laid when Rome still mattered to the world. They're uneven now, worn down by cartwheels and time, and the occasional desperate scramble away from Vikings. Yes, Vikings got this far south. Even the longships wanted a Roman holiday. You can feel the grooves under your sandals. Not that you remember putting on sandals, but here they are, leather straps biting gently into your ankles. Modern you would be screaming for arch support. 10th century you is just grateful the soles aren't made of wood. A bell tolls somewhere. Not the deep, solemn bong you might expect from a great cathedral. It's more of a tinny clang, like someone hitting a copper pot with a wooden spoon. That's because most of the great bells have been melted down to make weapons or coins or both. The sound ripples through the air and dies quickly, smothered by the humidity and the general sense that nobody's listening anyway. And yet, the ruins are listening. You can feel it. The broken columns lean in. The chipped marble ears of vanished emperors seem to tilt toward you. The Forum isn't dead. It's just whispering now, because shouting is what got it into trouble in the first place. You walk past the Arch of Septimius Severus, which is still mostly standing but has been colonized by pigeons who treat it like a luxury high-rise. A small boy in a tunic that's more patch than fabric is trying to sell you a handful of dates. They look like shriveled thumbs, and you politely decline by pretending you don't speak Latin. He shrugs. Tourists are terrible for business anyway, and runs off to chase one of the goats. The goats, at least, understand the local economy. Now you reach the Via Sacra, the sacred way, which is anything but sacred at the moment. It's more of a mud track with delusions of grandeur. Two priests are arguing in the middle of it, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm that suggests they've been having this same fight for decades. One of them is waving a scroll that looks important, but is probably just a grocery list in fancy script. The other keeps pointing at the sky, as if God himself is going to settle the dispute over who borrowed whose cassock. Neither of them notices you, which is perfect, because you're not here to be noticed. You're here to observe, to drift, to let the city forget you're watching. The light is almost gone now, and the first candles begin to appear in windows. They're not the romantic flicker of a dinner party. They're the desperate sputter of tallow that smells like a wet dog on fire. Each flame is a tiny miracle of survival in a city that can't keep its streets lit. You see one in the window of a house that's been built right into the side of the temple of Antoninus and Faustina. Because why let good walls go to waste? A woman's silhouette moves behind the flame, and for a moment, you think she's looking at you. But she's just checking whether the goats have gotten into the grain again. Everyone's problems are smaller now, which makes them feel bigger. Here's where the unusual detail creeps in. The Romans of this era have developed a superstition about speaking above a whisper after sunset. They believe the dead emperors get jealous of loud voices and send bad dreams to those who disturb their dust. So the entire city mutters. It's like being inside a library where everyone's reading different books, all of them about how much they miss the aqueducts. You catch snippets. The grain shipment is late again. My cousin saw a Saracen ship near Ostia. The Pope looked tired at Mass. That last one makes you perk up. The Pope. That's why you're here, isn't it? Something about a dynasty, a family that turned the papacy into a family business more dysfunctional than a goat-herding co-op. But you're not meeting them yet. First, you have to understand this Rome, this shrunken, stubborn, slightly smelly version of an empire. The scholars agree on this much. By the year 900, Rome was a ghost town with a pulse. The population had collapsed from over 1 million in imperial days to maybe 30,000, and most of those were clerics, beggars, or people who'd forgotten there was anywhere else to go. The city was ruled not by emperors, but by families. The Theophylacts, the Crescentii, the Tusculans, who treated the papal throne like a chess piece they couldn't stop moving. This is your grounding in history. Chinese letter of reality, the hard fact that the seat of Western Christianity had become a local parish with delusions of grandeur. The mystery begins with the silence. Historians still argue about why the records from this period are so spotty. Was it a deliberate purge? Did someone burn the archives to hide the scandal? Or did everyone just get so bored that they stopped writing things down? You can feel that gap in the dark spaces between the candles in the way the locals avoid your eyes when you ask what year it is. They're not sure. Time has become slippery, measured by feast days and famines rather than calendars. The city is a manuscript with pages torn out, and you're standing in the margins. A breeze picks up from the river, carrying with it the sound of someone playing a lyre badly. The tune is half forgotten, the strings are out of harmony with themselves, and yet it fits this place perfectly. Rome as a song that's been covered too many times, the melody still recognizable but the lyrics all wrong. You walk toward it, because what else are you going to do? The ruins lean in a little more. The goats bleat their approval. The bell clangs once more, a final protest against the darkness, and then gives up. The city is yours now, or perhaps you are the city's. It's hard to tell who's haunting whom. The lyre leads you up the Calian hill, which is less a hill and more a determined slope that's been wearing the same stone steps for 600 years. They're slippery with moss, and the sweat of pilgrims who took a wrong turn trying to find St. John Lateran. Your sandals slap against the marble with a sound like applause from a very tired audience. The music gets louder, though louder is a relative term. It goes from whispering in a library to murmuring in a confessional. You round a corner and find a boy, maybe 12, sitting on a crate, plucking strings with the concentration of someone who's been told this is his ticket out of goat herding. He doesn't look up. Nobody looks up in Rome anymore. It's too dangerous to make eye contact. You drop a copper coin, real or imagined, you're not sure, into his bowl, and he misses a note in surprise. That's your good deed for the decade. The house waits at the top of the hill, and it's not a house so much as a fortress wearing a party mask. From the outside, it's all thick walls and small windows, the kind of place that says, I've survived Visigoths, Saracens, and 3 outbreaks of plague. Don't even think about knocking. But inside, oh, inside is where the mask comes off. The door is opened by a slave who moves like smoke, and you step into a courtyard where a fountain still splashes, which is a miracle, because most fountains in Rome have become elaborate bird baths or convenient places to dump kitchen slops. This one actually works. Water trickles over a statue of some forgotten nymph whose nose has been replaced with a daub of wax, giving her the look of someone who's had very bad plastic surgery. The water smells of lime and secrets. And then you meet Theophylact. He's not what you expect from a man who essentially runs Rome. He's not broad-shouldered or battle-scarred or even particularly tall. He's compact, neat, with hair that's going silver in a way that suggests precision rather than age. His tunic is plain wool, but the kind of plain that costs more than silk, because it's been dyed exactly the right shade of undyed. He doesn't carry a sword. He carries a stylus behind his ear, which is infinitely more threatening. They call him the censor, which sounds like a piece of farming equipment, but actually means he's the one who sees everything. The city's revenues, its grain supplies, its grudges, its whispered betrayals. He's the secular power behind the spiritual throne, the man who makes sure the Pope can afford his candles and his enemies don't live long enough to blow them out. Good, he says, as if you've passed some test just by showing up. You're not a Lombard spy. They knock. He leads you deeper into the house, where silk curtains hang in doorways like expensive cobwebs. They're Byzantine silk, the real stuff, not the local knockoffs where the dye runs if you sweat. Each curtain is a landscape of peacocks and trees that never existed in nature, stitched with thread so fine it could slice cheese, and they hide everything. Behind one, you hear the rustle of fabric and a woman's low laugh. Marozia, you'll later learn, though right now she's just a voice with teeth. Behind another, the clink of coins being counted by someone who breathes through their mouth. Behind a third, silence so thick you could spread it on bread. Theophylact moves through it all like a conductor who's rehearsed this symphony of secrets 1,000 times. He doesn't part the curtains, he slides between them, and they barely shiver. The room he finally brings you to is small and round, with a ceiling that curves like the inside of a snail shell. There's a couch, but not the reclining Roman kind. This one's Frankish, heavy wood with cushions that have been restuffed so many times they've developed their own personality. You sit. The cushions sighs. Theophylact pours wine from a jug that looks like it was stolen from a much nicer era. It probably was. The wine is thick, sweet, and faintly suspicious, like it's been flavored with something that might be cinnamon or might be ground beetle shells. You drink it anyway. Modern, you would send it back. 10th century, you knows that refusing a drink from the censor is how people wake up in the Tiber with fashionable new ankle weights. Rome is a patient, he says, settling into a chair that looks too delicate for his authority. The Pope prays, I prescribe. Sometimes the prescription is grain, sometimes it's a different Pope. Here's your grounding. Historians agree that Theophylact I, Count of Tusculum, was the dominant figure in Roman politics from roughly 904 until his death in 924. He held the titles senator and superista, the latter meaning superior or overseer, a word that sounds like a mattress brand but carried the weight of a king. He controlled the papal elections, the treasury, and the municipal militia. His wife, Theodora the Elder, was equally formidable. Together, they turned the papacy into a family heirloom, passing it between their children and lovers like a cursed fruitcake. The unusual detail: the walls of this room are painted with frescoes that tell stories, but the stories are all wrong. A saint slays a dragon, except the dragon is smiling and the saint looks terrified. A bishop blesses a crowd, but his hand has 6 fingers, and the crowd is throwing tomatoes that haven't been invented yet. It's as if the artist was working from a description given over a very bad phone line. Theophylact catches you staring. The painter was Greek, he says. He thought our saints were too gloomy. I told him gloomy saints keep the city humble. He added extra fingers for luck. The mystery lingers in the air like incense that won't dissipate. Theophylact knows why you're here. He must. He knows everything: which cardinal is sleeping with which deacon, which grain shipment is 2 weeks late, which pilgrim is actually a tax collector from Spoleto with a fake limp. But does he know what you're thinking? Does he know you're from a time where Rome is a postcard, where popes are figureheads, where no single family controls the Netflix password to the entire church? He watches you with eyes the color of river water, murky, but alive with things moving beneath the surface. He's waiting for you to ask the wrong question, the one that will reveal you don't belong. So you don't ask anything. You just sip the beetle wine and listen to the curtains breathe. Outside, the city settles into its nightly mutter. A dog barks, but it's a tired bark, the kind that knows nobody's coming. The lyre boy has stopped playing. Maybe he's counting his coins. Maybe he's been taken home by his mother, who smells the city on him and weeps into his hair. Theophylact pours you more wine, and the snail shell room seems to tighten, not in a threatening way, but like a blanket being tucked around you. You are in the heart of the machine now. You can feel its pulse. It's irregular, arrhythmic, and it tastes like copper. A curtain parts just a finger's width, and you see a flash of red hair, a scent of rosewater and something darker like ink. Marozia, the censor's daughter. She's 12 or maybe 20. In this light, everyone's age is negotiable. She looks at you directly, which is rarer than the silk, and you realize she's measuring you the way a cook measures flour, necessary but potentially explosive if handled wrong. Then the curtain falls and she's gone. Theophylact smiles. It's not a kind smile. It's the smile of a man who's just confirmed a suspicion. She likes you, he says. That's not always a compliment. The curtain folds back into place with a whisper of silk, and Theophylact's smile doesn't fade so much as settle into the architecture of his face, like a crack in a fresco that was always meant to be there. He doesn't elaborate on whether Marozia's interest is a blessing or a death sentence. In Rome, they're often the same thing, just with different timing. You're led out of the snail shell room through a corridor that doubles as an aviary. Someone, at some point, decided that the censor's house needed decorative doves, and now they're everywhere, perched on busts of forgotten consuls, nesting in the folds of those expensive curtains, judging you with the beady-eyed contempt of birds who have seen centuries come and go and have decided that human ambition is just another seed to peck at. One of them leaves a small, white contribution on your shoulder. Theophylact pretends not to notice. You decide to treat it as a baptism. Outside, the night has thickened into something you could spread on bread. The streets are quieter now, not because people are sleeping. Most of them aren't, but because the whisper rule has become law. Everyone is muttering their prayers, their plots, their grocery lists in the same hushed monotone, creating a citywide hum that makes your teeth vibrate slightly. You follow Theophylact down the slope of the Caelian, past the boy with the lyre who's now asleep on his crate, the instrument tucked under his arm like a teddy bear. Rome is a city of nappers. At the bottom of the hill, the Lateran Palace waits. If the censor's house was a fortress with delusions of grandeur, the Lateran is a basilica with delusions of being a house. It started as Constantine's gift to the Bishop of Rome. All imperial splendor and gold leaf, but 16 popes, and a few hundred years later, it's become something else entirely. A patchwork quilt of architecture where the seams are showing. One wing is still vaguely imperial, with columns that remember their purpose. Another wing is pure medieval improvisation, built from scavenged temple stones and optimism. The roof leaks in the baptistry. The floors slope like a funhouse. It is, in short, the perfect place to hide a dynasty. You enter through a side door, because the main entrance is blocked by a mound of rubble from the last earthquake, and nobody's gotten around to moving it. Earthquake cleanup is scheduled somewhere between fix the sewers and maybe don't have another pope die suspiciously. The door is smaller than you are, which means you have to duck, and you're not particularly tall. You wonder if people were shorter back then, or if the door was designed to make everyone feel humble. Probably both. Inside, the air changes. It's still thick with incense and river slime, but now there's a third layer, beeswax. Real beeswax from real bees, which in this economy is like walking into a room lined with platinum. The candles here are thick as your wrist and burn with a steady, arrogant flame that says, "I'm not made of rendered goat fat, peasant." They illuminate a hallway where the mosaics have started to peel, and saints who once gazed serenely at the faithful now look like they're trying desperately to remember where they left their keys. And then you see him. Sergius Roman III moves through the candlelight like a rumor moves through a monastery, quietly, inevitably, and with the faint sense that he's already been here before you arrived. He's tall, which is the first thing you notice, because everyone else in Rome seems to have been built for a smaller, more economical world. His robes are white, but it's a white that's been washed so many times, it's become a kind of yellow-gray, like old piano keys. He wears a pallium that's been patched with thread that doesn't quite match, which is either an act of humility or a sign that the treasury is in worse shape than anyone admits. His beard is trimmed with geometric precision, each hair seemingly accounted for in a ledger somewhere. His eyes are the color of rain on stone. He doesn't acknowledge Theophylact. He doesn't acknowledge you. He glides past, his slippered feet making no sound on the mosaic tiles that depict Christ feeding the 5,000, though 2 of the fish have chipped off, making it look like Jesus is just really excited about bread. A trail of cardinals scurry in Sergius's wake, but they keep their distance, a respectful 5 paces back, as if proximity might be contagious. He turns a corner, and they flow after him, a school of dull fish following a pale shark. Here's your grounding. Sergius Roman III became pope in 904, and his pontificate is what historians politely call controversial. He was elected with the enthusiastic support of the Theophylact family, and he repaid them by making their daughter, Marozia, his. Well, sources differ. The word mistress feels too modern, too contractual. The word companion feels too innocent. The Latin texts call her filiola, little daughter, which is either endearing or deeply unsettling depending on how much you trust 9th century Latin euphemisms. What's certain is that Marozia, at around 15 or 16, became the most powerful woman in Rome, and Sergius became the pope who preferred shadows to sunlight. He reigned for 7 years, and in that time he allegedly fathered a son who would later become pope. The family business, indeed. The unusual detail, Sergius has a pet parrot. It's green and red and sits on a perch in the papal bedchamber, which you glimpse through a door that's been left ajar. The bird says only one thing over and over: memento mori. Someone taught it Latin, possibly as a joke. Sergius doesn't seem to mind. He talks to it the way some men talk to their dogs, in a low, weary voice that suggests the bird's advice is just as good as anyone else's. You hear him murmur, "Yes, yes, I remember," as he passes the door, and for a moment you're not sure if he's talking to the parrot or the darkness itself. The mystery is the silence. For a man who's supposedly running a city and a church and a dynasty, Sergius speaks remarkably little. The Lateran is full of murmurs. Secretaries scribbling, priests praying, the parrot dispensing mortality reminders. But the Pope himself moves in a bubble of quiet. Historians can't agree on why. Some say he was chronically ill, his voice weakened by constant fever. Others suggest he was simply prudent, aware that every word could be used against him by the Theophylacts, the Crescentii, or the ghost of Pope Formosus, whose corpse he'd helped put on trial a decade earlier. Yes, that happened. The cadaver synod, where they dug up a dead pope, propped him in a chair, and cross-examined him. Even by Roman standards, it was a bit much. Sergius was there, taking notes. Maybe that's why he doesn't talk much now. Some conversations are hard to come back from. You're left alone in the hallway. Theophylact has vanished through yet another curtain, presumably to count something or threaten someone. The candles flicker, and for a moment you think you see Marozia again, a flash of red hair at the far end of the corridor. But it might just be the light playing tricks. The Lateran is full of tricks. The floor tilts, the saints frown, the parrot tells you to remember death. Rome is a patient, Theophylact said. Sergius is the symptom nobody wants to name. A bell tolls, not the tinny part bang from the forum, but a real bell, deep and sonorous, though it cracks slightly on the last note. Vespers. The cardinals reappear, filing into the chapel like men going to a funeral they've already RSVP'd to. Sergius is at the head, his white-yellow-grey robes blending with the candlelight until he looks like he's made of wax himself, just another candle in a palace full of them, burning down from both ends. You stay in the hallway. The parrot falls silent. The mosaics stop peeling, if only because it's too dark to see them now. The river smell creeps back in, mixing with the beeswax until the whole place smells like a church that's been dropped in a swamp. It's not pleasant, but it's honest. Rome is trying to be both eternal and immediate, sacred and squalid, a ghost story told by a man who's still alive. Sergius moves through it all like a man who knows the ending and has decided to skip to the credits. The curtain at the end of the hall moves. No one is there. Or maybe someone is, and they're just very good at being no one. In the Pornocracy, the difference is academic. The curtain parts, not with a dramatic sweep, but with the resigned sigh of fabric that's been doing this dance for centuries. Marozia stands there, and time does that thing it does in her presence. It hesitates. She's younger than you expected, older than she should be. At 16, she has the eyes of a woman who's already planned her own funeral and decided the catering is inadequate. Her hair is the color of a fox that's outsmarted every hunter in the forest, and it's braided with ribbons that cost more than the house you're standing in. But it's the pearls that catch you. They always do. She wears a necklace of them, each one the size of a baby's tooth, and they're so perfectly matched that you know they were stolen from something sacred, a statue, a reliquary, possibly an angel's jewelry box. She sees you looking and lifts them slightly, letting them click together with a sound like ice cubes in a glass. "Do you like them?" she asks. "They're talkative." She means this literally. The pearls have been soaked in something, perfume, poison, priestly blessings, and they click against each other in a rhythm that almost sounds like speech. You lean in, because she wants you to, and you can hear it, a faint, dry clack, clack, clack that could be Morse code if Morse had been invented yet. Maybe it's just your imagination, heated by the beetle wine and the general sense that reality here is more of a suggestion. But Marozia looks pleased that you're listening. "They belong to my mother," she says, and the way she says mother makes it sound like a job title, complete with benefits and an early retirement package that involves a convent. She wore them when she met the emperor. He gave her Constantinople for a night. She gave him a headache that lasted a decade. Here's your grounding. Marozia was indeed the daughter of Theophylact and Theodora the Elder, and she was indeed the mistress of Pope Sergius Roman III. But calling her a mistress is like calling a lioness a cat who hangs around the watering hole. She was the senatrix, a title that didn't exist for women before her, and mostly didn't exist after. She controlled Rome's finances, its military appointments, and most importantly, its popes. She gave birth to John Roman XI, who would become pope, and to Alberic Roman II, who would later imprison her in the castle of Sant'Angelo. She was, in the words of one chronicler who clearly needed a drink, the face that launched 1,000 synods. The unusual detail, she keeps a small vial of vinegar around her neck, tucked behind the pearls. She uses it to test whether people are lying. According to her, a liar's sweat turns the vinegar pink. You have no idea if this is true, and neither does she, but everyone believes it because she believes it, and in Rome, that's the same as scripture. She offers it to you now, tilting the vial so the liquid sloshes against glass so thin you could read through it. "Taste," she says. "Tell me what you see." You demur. She smiles. The vial disappears back behind the pearls, which are still chattering to themselves like old women at a funeral. The mystery is what she wants from you. Not from Rome. Rome is simple. She wants it to behave and stop leaking money and maybe stop smelling so much like the Tiber. But you're a variable. You don't have a title, which means you don't have a price tag. You're not a cardinal, which means you're not already plotting her downfall. You're not a Lombard, which means you might be useful. She's measuring you the way you measure flour, necessary, but potentially messy. She turns, and the pearls catch the candlelight, and for a second each one holds a tiny reflection of the hallway, the crooked saints, the parrot's perch, the place on the wall where a mosaic finger points accusingly at nothing. Then she moves, and the reflections scatter. You follow because you've forgotten how to do anything else. The corridor leads to a room that's all pillows and shadows. It's where she does her business, which is not the kind of business that involves ledgers or threats. Those she reserves for the daylight. This is the soft power room, where she convinces people that her ideas are their ideas, that her ambitions are their salvation. A cardinal is already there, perched on a cushion like a nervous sparrow. He's young, with a face that still thinks it can be saved from itself. Marozia gestures for him to stay seated. She doesn't sit herself. She paces, and the pearls keep time. "The Saracens are in Sicily," she says, not to you, but to the cardinal. "They're eating oranges and planning our funeral. We need a new fleet." The cardinal stammers something about treasury, about the grain tax, about how the fishermen in Ostia are already paying more than they can afford. Marozia stops pacing. The pearls stop clicking. The silence is immediate and absolute, like someone turned off the world. "Tell the fishermen," she says softly, "that every third fish they catch now belongs to me." "I'm not asking. I'm networking." The word networking is so anachronistic that you almost laugh, but the cardinal doesn't flinch, which means this is normal vocabulary for her. He nods, scurries out, and you wonder if he's grateful to escape or terrified of what he'll have to do next. Probably both. In the Pornocracy, gratitude and terror are the same coin, just different sides. She turns to you now properly, and you realize she's been aware of you the entire time, the way a spider is aware of every vibration on its web. "You don't belong here," she says. "It's not an accusation. It's a simple observation, like pointing out that someone's shoes don't match. But you're still here. That's interesting." She steps closer. The pearls are cold when they brush your hand. She's let them fall against your palm, a test, a gift, a threat. Each one is smooth and perfect and utterly indifferent to your existence. But they're still talking, that faint clack, 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 and now you can almost make out the words, "Remember, remember, remember." "Theophylact thinks you're a spy," she says. "I think you're a ghost from a Rome that hasn't happened yet." Which is more dangerous, do you think? Before you can answer. Not that you have an answer. She's already moving on, the pearls swinging back into their conspiratorial huddle around her neck. She's done with you for now. But the pearls have your scent, or you have theirs. Something has been exchanged that can't be returned. She leaves through a different curtain, one that leads not deeper into the Lateran but out into the city itself, and you glimpse the night beyond, the river, the stars that have seen everything and decided not to comment, a child singing a rhyme about dead popes. The curtain falls, and you're alone with the cushions and the shadows and the lingering smell of rosewater and ink. The parrot, somewhere down the hall, reminds you to remember death. The curtain behind you is still shivering from Marozia's exit when you hear it, a sound that doesn't belong to the palace's usual symphony of mutters and distant parrots. It's a voice, high and clear, speaking in a language that isn't Latin, isn't Italian, which also doesn't exist yet, but something that sounds like it's being chewed rather than spoken. Old English. Anglo-Saxon. You follow it, because curiosity is the one modern habit Rome hasn't beaten out of you yet. Down another corridor, past a kitchen where a cook is beating an octopus with a mallet. Don't ask. It's a Tuesday. And through a doorway that was once part of a triumphal arch, but now serves as the side entrance to what might be a courtroom, if courtrooms were run by people who'd lost the instruction manual. The room is a basilica that someone gave up on halfway through converting it into a stable. Columns rise to a ceiling that's half mosaic, half bat habitat. The floor is a lake of packed dirt with a few stubborn tiles poking through like broken teeth. And the crowd, oh the crowd, they're not the polished citizens of Cicero's imagination. They're the people who actually live here, fishermen with scales in their hair, women with babies slung like grocery bags, a deacon picking his teeth with a stylus, and at least 3 goats who seem to have subpoenas. In the center stands the Englishwoman. She's tall, which makes her a spectacle in itself, and her hair is the color of winter wheat, which makes her a target. Her dress is Anglo-Saxon aristocracy, wool so fine it's almost water, woven in patterns that tell stories of kings and monsters. She holds herself like someone who's used to being listened to, which is unfortunate, because nobody here speaks her language except a priest from Canterbury who's been living in Rome so long he started to dress like a local and sweat like one too. He's translating badly. She says she is accused of. Wait, no, she says she is not accused of. He pauses, wipes his forehead with a sleeve that's seen better decades. She says the river is not her fault. The crowd murmurs, and yes, it tastes like sour wine. It's the taste of 1,000 mouths that have been drinking watered-down vinegar all morning because the wine shipment is late again. Their breath mixes with the smell of unwashed wool and the octopus from next door, creating an atmosphere that's less court of law and more festival that went wrong. The accuser is a man named Benedict, which is about as specific in this century as being named Mike. He's a minor noble from Campania who owns land that's been underwater since the last Tiber flood, and he's decided that's not a hydrology problem but a witchcraft problem. Specifically, an English witchcraft problem, because everyone knows the Anglo-Saxons have weird ideas about water. They baptize people in it, for God's sake. She came to Rome to pray at the tombs of the apostles, translate the sweaty priest, but she brought the rain with her, 40 days of it. My olives are drowning. The crowd rumbles. Olives are serious business. You could forgive a woman for almost anything, heresy, bribery, that thing she did at the market with the badger, but threatening the olive crop is how you get turned into a cautionary tale. Here's your grounding. Witchcraft trials in the 10th century weren't the systematic horror show they'd become 300 years later. They were local, messy, and often weirdly bureaucratic. The church was still debating whether witches even existed. Some bishops said it was all superstition. Others said it was real but overstated. And a few, usually the ones with property damage, said burn them just in case. Accusations were political weapons. Blame the foreigner, the widow, the woman who's too beautiful or too strange, or who talks to her cat in languages that aren't Latin. This trial could be happening. Probably was, in some form. The unusual detail, the judge is a notary named Leo, and he's brought his own chair. It's a folding stool made of elephant ivory, which is either a relic of imperial grandeur or a sign that he's overcompensating. He keeps tapping his stylus against it in what he clearly thinks is a menacing rhythm, but actually sounds like a woodpecker with hiccups. When he wants to make a point, he unfolds a piece of parchment that's been reused so many times it looks like a palimpsest of bad decisions. On it, he's drawn a chart, flood levels, rainfall days, and a crude sketch of the Englishwoman frowning at a cloud. "Exhibit A," he announces, "the cloud." The crowd leans in. They've never seen a cloud used as evidence before. They're impressed. The Englishwoman, whose name turns out to be Elfgifu, pronounced Elfgivu, which the Romans immediately mangle into Alfie Juju, tries to explain that England is an island, that islands have weather, that she's a passenger, not a pilot. The priest translates this as, she says she is from a land where water is confused. It does not know whether to be sea or sky. The crowd sighs. That's poetic enough to be true, which means it's suspicious. Now for the test. Because of course there's a test. Judge Leo insists on the traditional Roman method of determining witchcraft, the Tiber dunk. If she floats, she's a witch. If she sinks, she's innocent and probably dead, but that's a detail for the theologians. It's a test that makes about as much sense as a screen door on a submarine, but it's traditional, and in Rome, tradition is just peer pressure from dead people. They march her. And you, because you're now part of the entourage, like it or not, to the riverbank near the Pont Sant'Angelo. The water is its usual shade of questionable stew. A rope is produced. The crowd is humming now, a low, hungry sound that's half prayer, half anticipation of a good spectacle. Ælfgifu looks at the water, then at the sky, then at the pearls around Marozia's neck, which you suddenly notice are also here, watching from a distance. Marozia is leaning against a column, eating a fig, completely unmoved. The priest from Canterbury is sweating so much he's become a human irrigation system. She says she'd prefer to just pay the fine. There is no fine. There is only the river. They tie the rope around her waist, not gentle, but not cruel either, like they're preparing her for a very aggressive swimming lesson. The crowd leans forward. The goats, who have followed because why not, bleat in unison. The Tiber burbles its own opinion, which is mostly not my problem. And then she speaks directly to you, in Latin. Clear, unaccented, perfect Latin. Tell them, she says, that the river remembers me. You have no idea what this means, neither does the crowd. But the way she says it, like she's quoting a receipt, makes the hair on your neck stand up. The water does seem to hesitate, or maybe it's just the tide, or maybe it's nothing and you're so sleep-deprived you're ascribing personality to a liquid that's mostly fish refuse. The mystery, the chroniclers never mention an Englishwoman. They mention floods, they mention strange weather, they mention foreigners being blamed for everything from lost keys to lost souls. But no Ælfgifu, no trial, no rope. So where did this memory go? Did the river really remember her? Did she sink or float? Did the goats ever get their subpoenas answered? Judge Leo drops his stylus. It rolls into the water. Everyone watches it float. They take that as a sign. They untie her. She walks away up the hill toward the Lateran without looking back. The crowd disperses, disappointed but also relieved, because lunch is soon and which burning makes you hungry. Marozia pops the last of her fig into her mouth, winks at you, and vanishes into the city's mutter. You're left on the riverbank, holding a rope that's still warm, wondering if justice was served or if Rome just got bored and decided to call it a draw. The rope stays in your hand until the fog rolls in, which happens somewhere between midnight and the realization that time in Rome is more of a suggestion than a rule. The fog doesn't arrive gently. It sort of slumps onto the city like a drunk uncle who's lost his keys and decided to stay for a week. It smells of river and wood smoke, and that peculiar 10th century tang of everyone having eaten too much garlic for 600 years straight. You can see about 3 feet in front of you, which is actually an improvement on most Roman governance. You tie the rope to a mooring post that's been there since Marcus Aurelius's boatman had a bad day, and you sit on the stone steps that lead down to the water. The steps are slippery with algae that's older than some countries, and you make a mental note that if you survive this, you're inventing shoes with better grip. A cat appears, black and white in a pattern that suggests it started as 2 different cats and merged in the fog. It sits beside you, licks its paw, and judges your life choices. You don't argue. The cat has probably seen worse. Morning arrives not with sunrise, but with the sound of men cursing. The fishermen of the Tiber have clocked in, and they are not happy about it. They appear out of the fog like ghosts who've been unionized, their boats low in the water, their nets hanging like broken promises. They're speaking a dialect that's not quite Latin, not quite Italian, but a river language all its own, heavy on consonants and creative blasphemy. One of them, a man with a nose that's been broken so many times it's become abstract art, sees you and the rope and the cat and puts it all together in an instant. "You're with the crazy English witch," he says. "It's not a question." In Rome, conclusions are drawn faster than knives and with about the same amount of accuracy. "She's not a witch," you say, which is the first time you've spoken aloud since you got here. Your voice sounds strange, too clean, like you've been dubbed badly into a foreign film. "Yeah, and my boat's not sinking," he says, gesturing to a vessel that is, in fact, taking on water at a leisurely pace. "But here we are." He tosses you a piece of flatbread. It's your breakfast, though the word breakfast implies a meal, and this is more of a roof tile that's been baked by someone who's only heard about food from a distance. It tastes of salt and smoke, and the general disappointment of being a grain that survived the harvest only to become this. But you're hungry, and Rome has a way of making you grateful for anything that doesn't smell like the Tiber, so you chew. The cat watches, unimpressed. The fog starts to lift, not all at once, but in patches, like a curtain being drawn by someone who keeps changing their mind. You can see the river now, and it's busy in the way that a disaster is busy. Everyone's moving, but nobody's getting anywhere. Boats cross each other's paths with the politeness of distant cousins at a wedding, each captain shouting advice that's actually insults. A barge loaded with amphorae of wine drifts past, and one of the amphorae is leaking, leaving a red trail that looks like the river is bleeding Sangioves. The fisherman sees your interest and shrugs. "Good year," he says. "Bad boat. Here's your grounding. The Tiber was Rome's artery, its sewer, its baptismal font, and its garbage disposal. By the 10th century, it was also its primary highway, since the roads had become obstacle courses of rubble and regret. Fishermen worked the river not for pleasure, but for survival, catching fish that had evolved to taste like whatever had been dumped that week. The river's level fluctuated wildly, sometimes flooding the lower districts so thoroughly that people commuted by boat. Scholars agree that controlling the Tiber meant controlling Rome, which is why every powerful family, Theophylacts, Crescentii, Tusculans, had their own docks, their own boatmen, their own private currents. The unusual detail, there's a superstition among the fishermen that the river's mood is determined by the Pope's dreams. If the Pope dreams of water, the Tiber rises. If he dreams of fire, it falls. If he dreams of his mother, the fish refuse to bite for 3 days. Right now, they're not biting, which means either John X is having a very Oedipal night, or the fish are just sick of being caught. The fisherman explains this while mending his net with fingers that are more callous than skin. "We had a pope once," he says, "who only dreamed of cheese. The river turned to milk, spoiled everything, couldn't catch a sardine for a month." You ask which pope. He can't remember. They all blur together after a while, he says, especially the ones who die in interesting ways. The priest arrives by rowboat, which is the 10th century equivalent of a priest showing up on a skateboard, technically functional but deeply unsettling. His name is Gregory, and he's from a church whose name he can't pronounce because he's lost his front teeth to scurvy. He rows with the rhythmic precision of a man who's been doing penance since birth, his oars dipping into the water with soft plish-plash, sounds that would be meditative if he weren't muttering the entire time. And the sin of envy is in the current, and the sin of pride is in the mud, and the sin of sloth is why this boat won't go straight. Lord, I'm trying, but the left oar has opinions. It's a running commentary on the spiritual state of the river, delivered in a monotone that suggests he's been rowing in circles for so long he's become his own parish. He sees you, sees the fisherman, sees the cat and nods. He's not surprised. This is his congregation. "Breakfast?" he asks, holding up a soggy lump that might be bread, might be a small animal that gave up on life. You show him your flatbread tile. He approves. "Good," he says. "Hard bread builds character and teeth." He taps his own gums as evidence. You're not convinced. He ties his boat to the same post you used for the rope, which is now officially the social hub of this stretch of riverbank. The cat investigates the boat, decides it's not worth sinking, and returns to judging you. Gregory settles onto the steps, unwraps his own breakfast, a piece of cheese that's achieved sentience and appears to be trying to escape, and continues his litany of riverine sin. The eels are gluttonous, the carp are lustful, and don't get me started on the ducks, Father. They're just showing off. The mystery is the fish. Specifically, a fish that shouldn't be here. The fisherman points to a flash of silver in the water, quick as a rumor, gone before you can focus. He says it's a lupus marinus, a sea wolf, which is what they call a fish that's never been catalogued by any naturalist, Christian or pagan. It appears after floods, never before. It tastes like honey, which is impossible. Some scholars, he uses the term loosely, meaning the guy who can raid in the next boat, think it's a holdover from the Roman fish salting factories that used to line the river, a genetic memory of a species that went extinct when the empire did. Others think it's a miracle, or a curse, or just a very confused herring. Gregory the priest has a theory. It's the sin of curiosity, he says, given scales and sent to spy on us. God has a sense of humor, but it's very dry. Like your bread. The fisherman nods, the cat yawns, and you realize you've just participated in a theological debate conducted entirely in breakfast crumbs and river mist. The fog lifts completely now, and you can see across to the other bank, where a group of men are unloading planks of wood that will become yet another house built into the ruins. Rome is a city of renovations that never finish, of scaffolding that becomes permanent architecture. The men sing as they work, a song about a woman who turned into a column, and you can't tell if it's a myth or a workplace safety warning. Gregory finishes his cheese, which has finally accepted its fate, and stands. I must row, he says. The Pope's dreams won't interpret themselves. Last night he dreamed of a ladder. The river is confused. He unties his boat, pushes off, and resumes his muttering, which now includes a line-item condemnation of ladders and their prideful verticality. The fisherman watches him go, then turns to you. He's not wrong, he says, about the dreams, about the river, about the bread, too. He tosses you another piece of flatbread, softer this time, as if the first one was a test and you've passed. It's still a roof tile, but it's a roof tile made with something approaching care. You chew, and it tastes less like disappointment and more like survival. The cat, satisfied that you've learned something, stands, stretches, and walks into the river without a sound. It doesn't swim. It just walks as if the water is solid, as if it knows something about physics that you don't. It turns, looks at you once, then dissolves into the silver flash of the lupus marinus, or maybe it was always part of the fish, or the fog, or the sin of curiosity. The fisherman watches this with the calm of a man who's seen cats become fish before. Happens, he says. They're all related anyway. You're not sure if he means the animals, the families, or the sins. Probably all three. The fisherman wipes his hands on a rag that used to be a tunic in a previous life and pulls a leather tube from his boat. This is for you, he says, as if leather tubes float down the Tiber every morning with your name on them. A man in a very clean robe paid me 2 copper coins to deliver it. He said you'd be here. I said you might be the river. He said that was close enough. The tube is sealed with wax the color of old teeth, stamped with a seal you don't recognize, a key and a sword crossed like they're having a polite argument. Inside, there's parchment, thick and creamy, which means someone's still importing the good stuff from Egypt and not telling the rest of the city. The handwriting is tiny, precise, and exhausting to look at. the kind of script that could fit the entire book of Revelation on a napkin. It's a dossier on John X. Not a name, not a title, but a man broken down into columns: birth, Tossignano, unknown year. Known for diplomacy, military strategy, surviving Marozia. Weakness, smiles too little, trusts too late. Current location, Lateran Palace, 3rd floor, room with the crooked window. You flip the page. There's a sketch of his face, and the artist has drawn his eyes as two tiny scales, perfectly balanced, which is either a metaphor or a complaint. Below that, a note: he weighs every word before speaking. This takes approximately 3 days. Bring lunch. Here's your grounding. John X, born in Tossignano around 860, became Pope in 914 after the brief and unmemorable reign of Pope Lando. Yes, Lando, like a discount sci-fi hero. He was a compromise candidate, which in Rome means everyone hated him equally. He was the first pope in decades to actually leave the city for military campaigns, leading a coalition of Italian princes to crush the Saracens at Garigliano in 915. He also tried to reform the clergy, which is like trying to organize a bucket of eels into a marching band. The chroniclers call him energetic, which is medieval speak for exhausting to be around. The unusual detail: he keeps a pet hedgehog in his study, named Spes, Latin for hope. It rolls into a ball whenever cardinals enter, which John finds both metaphorical and convenient. The hedgehog's quills have been coated in a thin layer of silver leaf, not for decoration, but because John discovered it prevents the local rats from chewing on his furniture. The rats have learned to avoid Spes, who now patrols the papal apartments with the slow, determined waddle of a creature that knows it's untouchable. You look up from the dossier, and the fisherman is gone. His boat is gone. Even the catfish ghost is gone. The only thing left is the rope, still tied to the post, and a single pearl on the step beside you, one of Marozia's, clicked off like a sentence ending. You pick it up. It's warm. A boy appears. Not the liar boy. This one is younger, cleaner, and has the look of someone who's been told his whole life that he's destined for greatness and has decided to believe it. He wears a miniature version of a deacon's robe, which means either he's very advanced or they're running out of adults to ordain. He bows. "The Holy Father will see you now," he says. "He's between appointments." You doubt John X is ever between anything. More likely he's in the middle of 3 appointments, a war council, and a nervous breakdown, and you're the calmer. You follow the boy King Deacon through streets that have decided to skip morning and go straight to afternoon. The sun is high now, brutal and personal, baking the mud into pottery. The city smells of yeast and anxiety. Bakers are shouting about the grain shortage. Mothers are shouting about the bakers shouting. And somewhere in the distance, someone is playing a trumpet badly enough to be considered a religious experience. You duck into the Lateran through the same side door, the one that's still blocked by rubble from an earthquake that happened before your great-great-grandparents existed. The boy squeezes through a gap that shouldn't exist. You follow, feeling like a cork being forced back into a bottle. John X's study is on the 3rd floor, up a spiral staircase that was designed by someone who hated ankles. The steps are uneven, some marble, some wood, one suspiciously made of compacted bread. You climb, and the temperature climbs with you. By the time you reach the landing, you're sweating in places you didn't know had sweat glands. The boy opens the door and vanishes into the wall, which might be a trick, or might just be how doors work here. The room is a library that's been hit by a small, scholarly tornado. Scrolls are stacked in columns that defy physics. Codices lie open on every surface, including the floor, where Spes the hedgehog is diligently reading one with his nose. The window is indeed crooked, not by design, but because the building has settled more on one side than the other, giving the whole room a permanent posture of mild confusion. And there, behind a desk that's actually a repurposed sarcophagus lid, is John X. He's smaller than the dossier suggested. Not physically. He's tall, broad, built like a man who could actually win a fight. But his presence is compact, focused. He looks up, and his smile starts at his mouth and dies before it reaches his eyes, like a messenger who's been given bad news and decides to turn back halfway. His eyes are grey, the color of a sky that can't decide whether to rain or just sulk. "You're the one Theophylact sent," he says. It's not a question. He knows. He probably knew before Theophylact did. "Good. I need a second opinion." He slides a parchment across the sarcophagus lid. It's a treaty with the Lombards, or at least it tries to be. The ink is still wet in places, which means he's been rewriting it all morning. The terms are simple. The Lombards stop raiding papal lands. The Pope stops calling them beard splitters in official documents. Everyone shares the road to Ravenna. But the margins are covered in notes. Is perpetual too strong? What about ongoing? Do we trust their duke, or is he the one who stole the silver candlesticks? Insert clause about hedgehogs. The last one is underlined. Twice. "I can't decide," John says, tapping the parchment with a stylus that's been chewed to a nub. "If I'm too lenient, they'll think I'm weak. If I'm too harsh, they'll think I'm Theophylact's puppet. If I mention the hedgehog, they'll think I'm mad. All three are true, but I can only afford to admit one." Here's your mystery. Historians still debate John X's relationship with Theodora the Younger, Marozia's mother, or possibly sister. The genealogies are a Gordian knot of ambition and questionable record-keeping. Some say she was his lover, his path to power. Others say she was his jailer, his handler. The dossier is maddeningly vague. Connection to Theodora, complicated. Avoid discussions of weather. What does that mean? Did they fight about rain? Did she control the Pope's dreams? Did she teach the parrot to say memento mori? John X catches you staring at the note. "Theodora," he says, and the name sounds like a sigh he's been holding for years. "Believes I can control the Tiber with my moods. I told her I can barely control my own beard. She said that's why I need her." He leans back. The hedgehog waddles over and curls around his foot, a silver quill ball of unconditional support. John smiles down at it, and this time the smile almost reaches his eyes. Almost. "I'm trying to save a city that doesn't want to be saved," he says. "It wants to be left alone to mutter in the dark. But if I leave it alone, the Saracens will take it. If I hold it too tight, the families will break my fingers. So I write treaties. I smile just enough, and I let a hedgehog guard my furniture." He slides another parchment across the lid. This one is blank, waiting for your opinion. The weight of it is ridiculous, as if silence has been pressed into animal skin. "Tell me," he says, and his voice is so quiet you have to lean in to hear it over the scratching of Spes and the muttering of the city below. "What would you do?" Before you can answer, not that you have an answer, because you're a tourist from a millennium away and your only qualification is that you're not currently a pope, the boy deacon reappears, his face pale. "Holy Father," he whispers, "Marozia is here. She says she's come for the treaty." John X's smile finally reaches his eyes. It's not a happy smile. It's the smile of a man who's been waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it's just landed in his lap. "Of course she has," he says. "Tell her I'm weighing it." The boy leaves. John hands you the blank parchment. "Write something," he says. "Anything, just make it sound final." You stare at the empty page. The hedgehog stares at you. The crooked window lets in a breeze that smells of river and rain and the distinct possibility that Marozia's pearls are clicking their way up the stairs. The pearls arrive before she does, clicking up the spiral staircase like a pair of impatient slippers. Then Marozia herself appears in the doorway, framed by the crooked lintel, and the room adjusts around her. The scrolls lean away. The candles dip. Even Spes the hedgehog unrolls slightly, as if preparing to either flee or file a formal complaint. She's carrying a basket woven so tightly it could hold water, which in Rome would be a miraculous upgrade to most infrastructure. "The treaty," she says, and doesn't bother with greetings, because greetings are for people who might not get what they came for. John X doesn't look up from the sarcophagus lid. He's drawing a small doodle in the margin of the Lombard document, a hedgehog wearing a papal tiara. "It's surprisingly good. It's not ready," he says. "I'm still weighing the moral implications of Clause 6. "There is no Clause 6, Marozia says, setting the basket on a stack of codices that immediately considers collapsing but thinks better of it. "There's only what we want and what they think they want. I've brought figs." She pulls back the basket's cloth covering, and the figs inside are so purple they're almost black, each one split open to show its pink heart. They smell like summer in a place that's forgotten what summer is supposed to taste like. She takes one, bites, and the juice runs down her chin. She doesn't wipe it. She lets it fall onto her tunic, where it leaves a stain that looks like a map of Sicily. John X finally looks at her. His grey eyes are the colour of a treaty that's been negotiated to death and back. "You can't bribe me with figs, Marozia." "I'm not bribing," she says, her mouth full. "I'm multitasking. You need to sign. I need to eat. The hedgehog needs to stop judging me." Spes, caught in the act of judging, curls back into a ball of silver quills and dignified disinterest. Marozia crosses to the window, looks out at the city that's half hers by blood and half hers by sheer force of personality. "The Saracens aren't waiting for you to get the verb tenses right," she says. "They're in Sicily planting oranges and building ships. Oranges, John. They're setting down roots. We need to show the Lombards we're serious before they start planting their own citrus." She turns back, and her pearls have started their clicking again, but now they're synchronized with the dripping of a leaky roof somewhere above, creating a rhythm that's almost a march. Clack, drip, clack, drip. It's the sound of time running out in stereo. John X slides the blank parchment toward her. "You write it," he says. "You know what you want." Marozia looks at the empty page the way a cat looks at a mouse that's pretending to be dead, amused, patient, and ready to pounce the moment it twitches. "What I want," she says, "is for you to stop pretending you're the one in charge of the ink." She dips the stylus. John's chewed one and begins writing. Her Latin is perfect, which is annoying, and her handwriting is better than his, which is infuriating. She doesn't pause. She doesn't cross anything out. She writes the treaty as if she's copying from a book that only she can read, and maybe she is. Maybe there's a secret library somewhere in the city, hidden behind a curtain in her mother's house, where all the real histories are written and the rest of us just get the rough drafts. The terms she writes are simple. The Lombards get safe passage through papal lands. The Pope gets a tithe of their plunder from the south, and everyone agrees that Marozia's family gets first pick of any new bishoprics that open up due to natural causes. It's a masterpiece of diplomatic sleight of hand. John X reads over her shoulder, and you can see the muscles in his jaw working, chewing over each clause like it's a piece of his own flatbread. "This is piracy with paperwork," he says. "Everything is piracy with paperwork," Marozia replies. "The difference is whether you get to keep the ship afterward." She finishes, blows on the ink, one quick, efficient puff, and presses John's signet ring into the wax. She doesn't ask him for permission. The ring is on his hand. She just takes it, uses it, and slides it back on his finger before he can object. It's so smooth you're not sure it actually happened, except the seal is there, red and final. "There," she says. "Now it's a treaty. Now you can save Rome." She says, save Rome, the way someone says water the plants. A chore that needs doing, but don't expect gratitude from the ficus. Here's your grounding. This is exactly how John X's papacy functioned. He was the public face, the theologian, the general who beat the Saracens. But the Theophylact family, Theodora, Marozia, their kin, were the engine. They controlled the appointments, the money, and the succession. John X tried to break free later and they broke him for it. But for now, in this moment, there's a fragile equilibrium. He gets to be Pope. She gets to be the power behind the throne. And Rome gets a treaty that might keep it from becoming a Saracen orange grove. The unusual detail, the basket of figs, has a false bottom. You notice it when Marozia lifts it to leave. There's a seam too neat to be accidental. She sees you seeing it, and her smile turns into something that could cut glass. "For the return trip," she says, "one must always bring a gift when visiting the Lombards. They're very particular about hospitality." She doesn't open it. She doesn't need to. You know what's inside, something small, something valuable, something that will make the Lombard Duke think twice about double-crossing a woman who brings fruit that bleeds. Maybe it's a reliquary. Maybe it's a lock of hair. Maybe it's the pearl you left on the riverbank, returned to her like a boomerang made of guilt. The mystery, why does she need you here? She wrote the treaty alone. She sealed it alone. She could have sent it by courier. Instead, she brought it here to this crooked room with you as a witness. Is she building an alibi, a scapegoat? Or is there something in the room that needed to see this happen? Something more than the hedgehog, more than the saints, something that lives in the crookedness and the candle smoke. She leaves. The pearls click down the stairs, slower now, as if the basket's weight has changed the physics of her footsteps. John X picks up the treaty, reads it one more time, and sighs. "You know what the hardest part is?" he asks, not really to you, but to the room, to the crooked window, to the catfish ghost that might be lurking in the corner. "The hardest part is pretending I had a choice." He rolls the parchment, ties it with a ribbon that's the exact color of his disappointment, and hands it to you. "Deliver this," he says. "Not to the Lombards, to the river." You stare at him. He stares back. Spes unrolls, sniffs the treaty, and curls up again, unimpressed. "Drop it in the Tiber," John X explains, as if this is a perfectly normal postal service. "At the spot where you watched the Englishwoman not drown. The current will carry it to the Saracens. They'll think the Lombards betrayed them. The Lombards will think the Saracens stole it. And while they're arguing, Rome gets to breathe." He's not saving Rome with treaties. He's saving it with theater. You take the treaty. It's heavier than it should be, weighted not with ink, but with the collective breath of a city that's learned to survive by pretending to be already dead. The pearl is still in your pocket, warm now, clicking faintly against the parchment tube like it's trying to edit the document. John X turns back to his desk, picks up his stylus, and begins drawing another hedgehog. This one wears a crown. "Go," he says, before Marozia changes her mind and delivers the real treaty. You leave the crooked room, descend the ankle-hating stairs, and step back into the morning fog that's returned for an encore. The treaty hums against your ribs. The pearl chatters in your pocket. The catfish ghost is waiting by the riverbank, sitting on the post where you tied the rope, which is now inexplicably dry. The river is calm, waiting for its delivery. The river receives the treaty the way a cat receives a gift, without gratitude, but with a slow, deliberate acknowledgement that something has entered its domain. You let the parchment roll off the stone steps and into the brown water. It floats for a moment, buoyed by hubris. Then the current folds it under like a secret it's been waiting to keep. The catfish ghost blinks once, turns and pads downstream after it, tail high, escorting the deception to its first performance. You stay on the steps long enough to watch the ripples die. The pearl in your pocket has gone quiet, as if even it recognizes a cliff edge when it feels one. Somewhere across the city, a bell tolls the 3rd hour, which in Roman timekeeping could mean anything from late morning to early next week. You climb back toward the street, knees reminding you that medieval architecture was designed by people who never expected to climb their own stairs more than once in a lifetime. The fog has burned off, leaving the air the color of stale bread, and the stones hot enough to fry the soles of your sandals, if your sandals had soles left. You weave through the market that's sprung up outside the Lateran like barnacles on a sinking ship. Vendors shout in 4 languages, none of them complete. A woman offers you a discount on apples that have already started quoting Augustine. I was once green, now I bruise toward corruption. You decline politely and keep walking, because today's agenda is a castle, and you're already late by several centuries. Castel Sant'Angelo rises ahead, a mausoleum that got bored of being dead and decided to become a fortress. Hadrian's tomb, once a cylinder of quiet marble, is now wearing a crown of battlements like it's trying to pass for fierce. The bridge leading to it is a spine of stone, lined with statues of angels who look as if they've been waiting so long they've forgotten what they are guarding. The Tiber flows beneath, slow and sly, carrying your treaty toward whatever plot it's meant to fertilize. At the gate, a guard stops you. He's wearing mail that's been patched so many times it's more thread than iron, and he carries a spear that's clearly been repurposed from a broom handle. He eyes you the way a goat eyes a new fence, not hostile, just deeply skeptical of your structural integrity. "State your business," he says, which in Roman means, "Tell me a story I can repeat later without getting in trouble." You produce the pearl. It's warm, almost humming, and the moment it catches the light, the guard's face rearranges itself into something approaching reverence. Pearls are currency, passport, and prophecy all at once in this city. He steps aside, muttering a blessing that might also be a warning, and you pass through the gate into the castle's shadow. Inside, the air drops 10 degrees. The walls are thick enough to muffle the city's mutter to a lullaby. Torches line the spiral ramp that climbs inside the drum of the fortress, their flames flickering in drafts that come from nowhere and everywhere. The ramp is wide enough for 2 men to walk abreast, but you find yourself alone, footsteps echoing like whispers that have learned your name. You climb, and the city falls away below, rooftops shrinking into a mosaic of terracotta and neglect. Halfway up, you meet a window cut into the outer wall. It frames Rome like a painting that's been restored by someone with strong opinions and shaky hands. From here, the Pantheon looks like a dropped coin, the Colosseum a broken crown. The river is a brown ribbon tying it all together in a bow that's coming undone. You can see the spot where you dropped the treaty. A faint shimmer still marks the surface, or maybe that's just sunlight on wishful thinking. A voice behind you says, "Pretty, isn't it? Pity it's ours." You turn. Alberic is leaning against the inner wall, arms crossed, looking like he's been carved from the same stone as the castle and then given a smirk for personality. He's 17, maybe 18, tall in the way that promises more height, but hasn't decided whether to deliver. His hair is dark, his eyes darker, and his smile is the kind that assumes you're already in on the joke, even if the joke is your imminent demise. Marozia's pearl, he says, nodding at your hand. She only gives those to people she hasn't decided to bury yet. Congratulations on being temporarily alive. Here's your grounding. Alberic Roman II, son of Marozia and probably Pope Sergius Roman III, will grow up to be the man who imprisons his mother, outlives 3 popes, and rules Rome like a king who refuses to wear the crown because crowns are ostentatious and harder to dodge in a fight. Right now, he's the spare heir, the extra son, the one who hasn't done anything memorable yet except survive adolescence in a family where that counts as rebellion. He's here, officially, to learn the art of fortification. Unofficially, he's here to watch. He pushes off the wall and starts climbing the ramp, expecting you to follow. You do. The higher you go, the quieter it gets, until the only sound is the soft scrape of his boots and the occasional clink of mail beneath his tunic. He talks as he walks, voice low, echoing off the curved stone. My mother thinks this place is a metaphor, he says. A tomb pretending to be a fortress pretending to be a tomb. She likes things that know what they are. I like things that don't. Gives me room to negotiate. You ask what he's negotiating. Everything, he says. The castle, the city, the pope, the river. You, eventually. He says it lightly, like he's offering to trade lunch, but the hair on your neck stands up anyway. You've been claimed by Rome, and Rome doesn't give refunds. At the top, the ramp opens onto the terrace where the mausoleum becomes a fortress, becomes a balcony to nowhere. The wind hits you like a priest who's had too much communion wine, enthusiastic, unsteady, and determined to make you confess. From here, you can see the entire curve of the river, the patchwork of roofs, the distant hills where the aqueducts stand like broken sentences. You can also see the road leading north, where a column of Lombard horsemen is just visible, tiny as toys, moving at the pace of politics. Alberic leans on the parapet, elbows on stone, chin on hands. They're early, he says, or late. Depends which treaty they're carrying. You wonder if he knows about the parchment you fed to the current. His smirk deepens, which means he either knows or wants you to think he does. In Rome, that's the same thing. He pulls something from his belt, a small iron key black with age. He sets it on the stone between you. This opens the lower chamber, he says, the one where they kept the ashes. My mother sealed it when my father died. Said some doors should stay locked. I say some doors just need better hinges. He doesn't ask you to open it. He doesn't have to. The key sits there like a question mark that's learned to be patient. Below, the river glints, carrying your lie toward the horizon. Above, the sky is the color of parchment waiting for ink. Between them, the castle breathes, holding its secrets like breath before a confession. Alberic straightens, stretches, and starts back down the ramp. Come if you like, he calls over his shoulder. Or don't. The castle keeps either way. You stay on the terrace a moment longer, pearl in your pocket, key on the stone, city spread below like a map that's been folded too many times and is starting to tear along the creases. The wind smells of river and rain, and the faint, metallic tang of history sharpening its knives. Somewhere down in the chamber, something shifts, stone on stone, a sigh that might be centuries old. The castle is waiting to see what you'll do next. The key is warm from Alberic's hand, but it cools fast, like it's eager to forget who held it last. You pocket it next to Marozia's pearl, metal clicking against nacre, 2 promises rubbing shoulders. Down in the courtyard, the Lombard horses have materialized, not the full column you saw from the terrace, just a vanguard of 20 riders, dusty, polite, and already bored. Their hooves clop on the old funerary stones with the rhythm of people who have ridden a long way to be underwhelmed. A groom leads them toward the stables that used to be mausoleum corridors. Horses duck under carved Latin epitaphs without reading them. Alberic is nowhere, which means he's everywhere. You descend the ramp alone, spiral after spiral, until the light from the terrace is a memory and the torches are too stingy to share. At the bottom you find a door you hadn't noticed on the way up, oak, iron-banded, small enough to make you stoop. The key slides in as if the lock has been practicing. The door exhales, opening onto a short corridor whose air tastes of extinguished candles and the calcium dreams of dead emperors. Inside, the round chamber is lit by one hanging clay lamp. The walls are niches, each the size of a strongbox, each once holding an urn of imperial ash. Most are empty now, ashes scattered, urns looted, imperial eternity interrupted by budget cuts. In the center stands a single wooden chair, utilitarian, out of time, 10th century carpentry parked inside 1st century marble. On it sits Marozia, side saddle, as if thrones are simply a matter of attitude. She's dressed for travel, dark wool, boots laced to the knee, a man's riding cloak thrown over one shoulder like a captured flag. The pearls glow softly, lit from within by whatever makes them talk. They're quiet now, respectful of acoustics. In her lap is a child, maybe 4 years old, asleep with his thumb in his mouth and a scrap of red silk clutched in his fist. You recognize the silk. It's the color of papal stockings. "Close the door," she says, voice low enough to belong to the lamp flame. Stone corridors carry gossip like wine carries dye. You obey. The latch clicks. Somewhere overhead a pigeon startles, wings batting stone once, then silence. "This is John," Marozia says, nodding at the sleeping boy. "Named for the Pope, not the Baptist. One dries your sins, the other dries your politics. Guess which we need tonight." Grounding. This child is John Roman 11, son of Marozia, and according to most sources, Pope Sergius Roman 3. He will sit on the papal throne at the age of 21, making him the only person in history who can put son of a pope, grandson of a senator, nephew of a duke, product of a dynasty on a CV, and still need his mother to write the reference. The chronicler Liutprand of Cremona will later call his pontificate a monstrous birth. But right now he's just a kid who's drooling on velvet. Unusual detail. Marozia keeps a tiny vellum book tucked inside the child's tunic, an alphabet primer whose letters are illuminated with gold leaf so thin you could breathe it in by accident. Each letter is paired with a virtue, A for auctoritas, B for benevolentia, all the way to Z for zelo, zeal. She reads it to him at night like other mothers recite lullabies, except the rhymes are about power and the monsters are real. Mystery. No one agrees where this boy was born. Rome, the Tusculum villa, in this very chamber under the eyes of Hadrian's ghost. The date floats between 910 and 914, elastic enough to make legitimacy negotiable. Marozia never clarifies. Time is a servant who brings her whatever year she needs. She strokes the boy's hair. He's tired of being a secret, she says. Secrets are heavy for small backs. You ask what she's doing in a sealed crypt beneath a fortress at dawn. The question sounds absurd even before it leaves your mouth. This is Rome, and dawn crypt visits are practically civic duty. Counting, she answers. Counting allies, counting enemies, counting how many times the city can be sold and repossessed before it notices its second hand. She lifts the child, sets him gently on the chair and stands. And waiting for you. That stops your breath. Me. You delivered the decoy treaty to the river. I need the real one delivered upstairs. Alberic thinks he's clever. He gave you the key to keep you busy, not to let you open anything useful. But keys are like men, they work for whoever turns them hardest. She reaches into the basket at her feet, the same fig basket from the Lateran, now emptied of fruit, and pulls out a second parchment tube, sealed not with wax but with a wafer of unleavened bread stamped with a lamb. Eucharistic glue, eat the seal, hide the evidence. The document inside is thinner than air, written in a hand so cramped it looks like the letters are huddling for warmth. Treaty of Mutual Defense, she says. Between me, the Lombards, and the ghost of every Roman who ever died on the wrong side of a gate. Signatures already collected. One space left, the Pope's. John will sign it upstairs during Mass. He'll think he's signing a land lease for a convent. You'll stand beside him, hold the ink, look useful. Bishops notice details like that when they're choosing the next pontiff. She's planning 20 years ahead, planting signatures like acorns. Footsteps echo overhead, boots more than one pair, voices muffled. The Lombards have been shown to their guest cells, but guests in Rome are just assassins who haven't received their invitation yet. Marozia listens, head tilted, pearls clicking once, twice, like a clock correcting itself. Time to ascend, she says. She lifts the sleeping boy, settles him on her hip with the practiced ease of someone who's carried futures before. You'll walk behind me. When the bell rings for the Sanctus, you'll hand the treaty to the Pope. Not before, not after. Precision is courtesy's sharper cousin. You ask why she trusts you with this. Her smile is thin, sharp, fond. Because you're temporary. You'll vanish one day, taking the memory with you, and leave no footprint for my enemies to measure. She moves toward the door, then pauses, reaches into her cloak, and pulls out a third object, a tiny enamel brooch, no bigger than a coin. On it, a phoenix the size of a fingernail, wings raised, rising from flames that are more suggestion than fire. She pins it inside your sleeve, where the fabric hides it from view, but you can feel its weight, warm as skin. For the return journey, she says. When you feel the heat, you'll know it's time to let go of whatever you're holding. You want to ask, let go how? But she's already moving, pearls counting the steps up the spiral ramp, child breathing slow against her shoulder. You follow, key still in your pocket, treaty against your ribs, pearl against your pulse. The corridor smells suddenly of incense. Someone swung a thurible overhead, or the castle itself is preparing for consecration. Halfway up, you pass a slit window. Outside, the city glitters like broken glass swept into a pile, golden, dangerous, impossible to walk across without bleeding. You realize the brooch is hotter now, not uncomfortable, but noticeable, like a whisper that's decided to use your skin as parchment. At the top of the ramp, daylight floods in. The chapel bell begins its ascent toward the Sanctus, each toll a rung on a ladder you can't see. Marozia steps into the light, and for a moment the pearls go silent, as if even they're holding their breath. Behind you, in the crypt, the chair sits empty. The lamp flickers once, then steadies, guarding the absence of a child who's about to become history's youngest bargaining chip. Above, the choir starts the holy, 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 voices braided with incense. You step forward, treaty in hand, brooch warming against your wrist like a tiny heartbeat that isn't yours. Precision, she said. You count the beats, 1, 2, on 3 you'll move. The city waits, muttering in the hush between heartbeats. The bell hits the third beat, your cue, and you glide forward like an extra who's finally learned the choreography. The chapel is smaller than you expected, a rectangle shoe horned into the fortress's shoulder blade. Mosaic saints lean inward, their gold tesserae catching torch smoke until they look embarrassed by the smell. A portable altar of polished porphyry stands on carpet that was once imperial purple, now sun bleached to the color of a bruise that's thinking about healing. John X is already at the altar, arms raised for the elevation. His vestments shimmer, Byzantine silk rescued from a pawn chest, mended with thread that doesn't quite match, so the Lamb of God has a faint goatee. Behind him, two deacons swing thuribles. The incense coils up, finds the crooked rafters, and forgets how to leave. In front, a line of Lombard nobles kneel, male shirts polished, beards combed, eyes darting like men who have remembered too late that communion wine can be poisoned. You step into the stall reserved for papal attendant, whose name nobody can pronounce. Marozia is 3 paces to your left, veil lowered, pearls mercifully mute. The boy John, now awake, sits on a tiny stool beside her, swinging silk-clad legs and humming the Sanctus in the wrong key. No one corrects him. Popes have been elected for less. The choir reaches the final hosanna. John X turns, extends his hand for the chalice, and that's your moment. You slide the bread-sealed treaty onto the altar cloth, positioning it so the wafer lamb stares up at the crucifix like it's applying for salvation. John's eyes flick downward. The pupils widen a millimeter. Recognition, resignation, maybe respect. Then he lays the chalice directly on top of the tube, blessing both sacrament and subterfuge in one fluid motion. Rome, city of efficient multitasking. Here's your grounding, the Mass is legally binding. A document placed beneath the chalice during the canon becomes written in the sight of the Lamb, which medieval courts treat like a notarized confession signed by God. Marozia isn't slipping the Pope a contract, she's baptizing it into gospel. Tomorrow, when John discovers what he actually signed, he'll need a miracle or a very good scribe to unsign it. Unusual detail, the Lombard nearest you, the one with the silvered braid and a nose that's been remodeled by previous arguments, keeps sniffing the air like he's caught a scent he can't name. It's the brooch. The phoenix pinned inside your sleeve is warming again, exhaling a ghost of cinnamon and burnt parchment. Apparently, sacramental smoke is its favorite food. It drinks it and grows hotter, the way some men drink praise and grow colder. Mystery, why does Marozia need the treaty sanctified in public? She could have forced John's hand in private. Instead, she's staged a liturgical hostage-taking, with 24 witnesses who'll swear on their own beards they saw the Pope approve the parchment. The answer shuffles in on soft sandals a heartbeat later. Cardinal Leo, secretary, archivist, professional eyebrow raiser, glides out of the sacristy carrying a second scroll, this one sealed in plain red wax. He places it, almost casually, beside the chalice. A duplicate, a safety net, a decoy for the decoy. While John recites the words of institution, Leo's fingers dance. He swaps the bread-sealed tube for the red-sealed one, palming the real treaty into his sleeve like a street magician who's found religion. The motion is smoother than candle drip. Even the Lombards don't notice. But you do, because you're watching the way a drowning man watches the tide. Marozia's veil twitches, her version of a victory smile. Plan A, public sanctification, is now Plan B, private leverage, and the witnesses will go home remembering the wrong scroll. Rome just invented the bait and switch harmony. The Eucharistic prayer ends. John lifts the chalice. The bells ring. The pearls give one satisfied clack. You exhale for the first time since the Sanctus began and realize the brooch is now hot enough to brand a phoenix onto your skin. A warning or a receipt. Communion begins. The Lombards file forward, hands outstretched like merchants expecting change. John places the host on each tongue with the precision of a man who's counted tongues before. When Silver Braid reaches the altar, he pauses, sniffs again, and whispers something in a dialect too thick for your Latin. John's eyebrow rises a fraction. He glances sideways, at you, then at the sleeve hiding the brooch. Recognition flickers, brief as a candle gnat. He gives the Lombard an extra large host, as if bigger bread might buy bigger loyalty, then sends him on his way. Mass ends with the ite, Missa Est. The congregation shuffles out, boots and sandals clattering on the stone, voices rising from whisper to marketplace roar. Marozia lingers, adjusting the boy's collar, letting the tide of bodies flow around her like water around a rock that knows it's prettier than the stream. When the last acolyte disappears, she turns to you. "Phase 2, she says, voice pitched for your ears and the angels. We wait for doubt to sprout." "Doubt?" you ask. "Doubt is a vine," she explains, collecting her skirts. It climbs fastest when watered by witnesses who aren't sure what they saw. By sunset, half the Lombards will swear the Pope blessed a treaty about olives. The other half will swear it was about brides. Truth. She taps the sleeve where Leo has hidden the real parchment, stays in the dark until it's ready to bloom thorns. She sweeps out, pearls counting her steps like an abacus of ambition. John X remains at the altar, staring at the chalice now empty of both wine and leverage. He looks older than he did at the elevation, as if the sacrament has taken weight rather than given it. You approach. He doesn't look up. "Do you think," he asks the altar cloth, "God counts signatures the way bankers count coins?" You offer the only honest answer you own, a shrug. He smiles anyway, tired and fond. "Then I hope he enjoys the smell of cinnamon." He lifts the chalice, carries it toward the sacristy, footsteps echoing like postscripts. Behind him on the carpet, the red-sealed decoy scroll lies forgotten, already curling at the edges, impatient to become tomorrow's rumor. You retrieve it. Someone should keep track of the lies, and slip it into your sleeve beside the brooch. The phoenix has cooled, job done for now. Outside, the fortress bell strikes none, which in Roman time means whenever we feel like it. And you realize you've spent an entire morning helping history forge its own footnotes. In the courtyard, the Lombard horses are being saddled for departure. Silver Braid glances up at the chapel window, nostrils still flared, searching for a scent he can't name. He won't find it. Incense and cinnamon have already merged into the general perfume of Rome, equal parts holiness and hustle. You descend the ramp, treaty heavy, pearl light, key still in your pocket like an unanswered question. Somewhere below, in the sealed ash chamber, the chair waits for the next child who needs to be hidden in stone. Somewhere above, in the papal apartment, John X is probably arguing with a hedgehog about the moral weight of counterfeit documents. Marozia's voice drifts down the spiral, half invitation, half summons. Bring the scroll. The city is ready for its close-up. You obey, because in the Pornocracy, even the extras get lines, usually the ones everyone else is too careful to say aloud. The courtyard smells of horse, hot leather, and the particular brand of lavender water Lombards splash on when they want to remind Romans that northern soap exists. Marozia stands in the middle of it like a maestro tuning an orchestra of testosterone, reins jingling, spurs clinking, men flexing story lengths of hair that took months of neglect to perfect. She raises one finger. Pearls provide the downbeat, and the chaos settles into a march. You're handed a mule. Not given, handed, the way you hand someone a dripping umbrella. The mule regards you with the weary patience of a civil servant who has seen every form of optimism and filed it under unsustainable. Its name, stitched into the halter in faded wool, is Secundus, which feels less like a name and more like a polite warning. You're always second. Get used to it. Alberic appears, now wearing mail that's clearly borrowed from a larger cousin, the rings hanging on him like chain mail bunting. He grins at your mule. "Brother in burden," he says, vaulting onto a black pony that looks ready to file assault charges. "Try to keep up. Mother's itinerary has no room for dawdling, dallying, or," he drops his voice, "digestive complaints." Grounding. This is a progress, a Roman road trip designed to show the flag, count the troops, and remind every petty duke between here and Spoleto that the papacy still has enough horsepower to make house calls. Officially, John X stays home. Popes don't go on campaign unless absolutely necessary, and anyway someone has to feed the hedgehog. Unofficially, half the Lateran is riding along in the luggage train, silverware for bribes, relics for morale, and a portable altar, so Mass can be sung on any hillside that looks consecratable. Unusual detail, Marozia's carriage is not a carriage. It's a converted siege tower on wagon wheels, dragged by 4 oxen the size of city gates. The sides are painted with frescoes of biblical peace wolf, dwelling with lamb, very low insurance rates, but the inside is fitted with drawers, pigeonholes, and a fold-down desk that turns the tower into a traveling chancery. She can issue a charter, seal a marriage, or excommunicate a village before the oxen have cleared their sinuses. Romans call it the ambulant throne. Her enemies call it the vending machine of fate. Mystery. The tower has a roof hatch that opens only from the outside. No one admits to installing it. Alberic claims it was meant for emergency angel deployment, but the hinges are recent and the bolt is polished. Someone plans to drop something, or someone, into the tower mid-journey. The hatch winks at you every time the sun hits the brass fittings, a wink that says remember me when the road gets narrow. The column lurches out of the fortress gate, down the slope, across the bridge. Shopkeepers pause mid-haggle to watch. A baker forgets to flip his flatbread, creating the first Roman charcoal briquette in history. Children run alongside, shouting for coins, blessings, or leftover figs. Marozia tosses silver, not coins, silver thread, thin as hair. The kids weave it into their collars, proud to wear currency they can't spend. Beyond the city walls, the world widens. Olive terraces step down hillsides. Cypresses stand sentinel like green exclamation marks reminding you the scenery is emphatic. The Via Flaminia stretches ahead, a spine of ancient stones worn smooth by the sandals of everyone who ever thought leaving Rome was a good idea until mile 3. Mile 3 is where the smell catches up, horse sweat, mule resentment, and the faint sweetness of the portable relics. St. Crispin's sock, allegedly unwashed since martyrdom, riding in a cedar box with tiny air holes so it can breathe. You ride downwind of it. Secundus, the mule, keeps turning his head to offer commentary. You pretend not to understand donkey sarcasm. By midday, the column halts beside a roadside shrine, broken column, faded fresco of Christ looking tolerant, and a spring that tastes like wet coins. While water skins refill, Marozia summons you to the ambulant tower. Inside smells of ink, oiled leather, and the particular lavender she uses to mask political adrenaline. She's seated at the fold-down desk, a half-written charter in front of her, grant of land to a Lombard duke who hasn't agreed yet. She dips the quill, hands it to you. "Sign," she says, "as witness." "I can't sign," you remind her. "I don't have a name here." Names are portable. She pulls a seal matrix from a velvet bag, a small disc of onyx engraved with a phoenix, same bird as your brooch. This is your name today. Press, drip wax done. History needs fingerprints, not birth certificates. You press. The wax is warm, the bird leaves a neat brand in blood red. You've just become Phoenix, Notary, Imperial Adjacent, and the parchment rolls away into a pigeon-hole marked future hostages. Outside, Alberic is demonstrating sword tricks to the Lombard escort, using a blade borrowed from a man twice his width. He swings, misses a thistle, and the momentum spins him full circle. The Lombards applaud, partly etiquette, partly relief that the teenage aristocracy is as clumsy as they are. He catches your eye, shrugs, practice. You shrug back, mule. Secundus flicks an ear in agreement. Afternoon heat turns the road to a griddle. Shadows shrink to puddles beneath the horses. Even the cypresses look tempted to walk uphill for some shade. You pass a field where sharecroppers are burning stubble. Smoke drifts across the column like a reminder that everything ahead has already been harvested at least once. Marozia calls another halt beside a milestone that claims Rome is 20 miles away. Roman miles, which are longer than normal miles, and feel longer still when ridden on a mule who negotiates every step. She climbs to the roof of the ambulant tower through the interior ladder, opens the controversial hatch, and surveys the horizon. From below you see only her boots and the hem of her cloak, but you hear the pearls clicking, counting distances in heartbeats. She descends, face unreadable, and issues a new order: camp here tonight. No village, no inn, just olive terraces and a dry stream bed. Tents sprout like mushrooms after political rain. A fire is kindled from broken vine poles. Someone produces sausages that smell suspiciously like the relic ox's distant cousin. The Lombards sing a song about a woman who turns into a river and drowns her creditors. The Romans counter with a hymn about tithing that accidentally rhymes with the Lombard chorus. Music drifts upward, finds the first stars, and politely extinguishes itself. Night deepens. You're assigned watch beside the oxen, who chew cud in contemplative slow motion. Secundus dozes, ears flicking at moths. Somewhere between the hymn and the river song, you realize the brooch on your sleeve is warming again, gentle, like a hand slipping into your pocket for company. The phoenix feels expectant. Across the camp, a figure slips between tents, Alberic minus mail, carrying something rolled under his arm. He heads for the tower. You follow at mule pace, quiet, stubborn, hard to intimidate. The side door of the tower is ajar. Inside, a single candle burns. Marozia stands at the desk, hair unpinned, pearls glowing like miniature moons. Alberic unrolls his package, another parchment, this one sealed with plain green wax. A correction, a contradiction, a receipt for the future. Mother and son speak too low for you to catch words, but the melody is familiar, trust measured in teaspoons, ambition ladled by the bucket. The candle gutters, their shadows merge, separate, merge again, dance of people who know each other's knives by heart. Your brooch pulses. Once. A reminder or a countdown. You retreat before the meeting ends, before you're noticed, before you have to choose sides in a conversation that has no innocent bystanders. Back at the oxen, Secundus lifts his head, offers a look that says, I saw nothing, I hear nothing, I carry everything. You scratch behind his ears. He leans into the weight of your confusion, solid, real, temporarily yours. Above, the Milky Way spills across the sky like a rough draft of Rome itself. Bright patches, dark gaps, all of it traveling somewhere it hasn't quite decided to arrive at yet. The tower hatch stands open, a square mouth swallowing starlight. Somewhere inside, ink is still wet, Wax is still warm, and a 17-year-old boy is learning how high his mother can reach when the ladder is made of treaties. You close your eyes, listen to hoofbeats that aren't happening yet, and try not to think about citrus trees taking root in papal soil. The brooch wakes you, not with sound but with heat, an urgent little sun against your sleeve. Dawn is still a rumor. The camp sleeps under a quilt of snores and shifting hooves. Secunda stands rigid beside you, ears pricked toward the olive terraces. You hear it then, the soft pop of a twig, the metallic kiss of scabbard on belt buckle. Someone is circling the camp the way wolves test the edges of a fire. You slip off the blanket, wool so scratchy it could exfoliate regrets, and step into the half-dark. The tower looms to your left, hatch still open like a yawning secret. A shape moves beneath it, hooded, cloaked, carrying a bundle the size of a bread loaf but cradled like a baby. The figure glances over one shoulder. Starlight catches the corner of a smile you recognize. Alberic, but softer, younger, as though night has filed the edges off his usual smirk. Behind him, from the direction of the Ark's pen, comes a second shape, taller, moving with the deliberate patience of someone who's done murder by candle light and found it wanting. Green cloak, Lombard braid. Silver braid himself, the nose remodeled noble who sniffed incense off your sleeve at Mass. His hand rests on his sword, hilt the way a priest rests on a gospel, familiar, certain, already halfway to forgiveness. They meet beneath the tower hatch. Words too low to catch, but the tone is ritual, question, answer, counter-offer. Then Alberic lifts his bundle. Cloth falls back just enough to reveal pale wood, a miniature coffin. No, a violin case without the violin, a scroll box, the twin of the one you watched Marozia seal with Eucharistic bread. Green sealed, you'd bet, the correction document from last night's mother-son conference. Alberic offers, silver braid accepts. Exchange complete, covenant made, betrayal upgraded to premium. Your brooch pulses again, heart cold heart like it's pumping blood rather than metal. The phoenix wants witnessing or maybe warning. You shift your weight, a dry leaf crumbles. Both heads turn. Eyes find you across 20 feet of darkness. Alberic's widen, caught, amused, calculating. Silver braids narrow, predatory arithmetic, one witness equals one throat. Time folds, accordion-like, then snaps open. Silver braid steps toward you. Alberic murmurs something urgent, amused. The Lombard hesitates, hand still on sword, then offers a nod that's half greeting, half measurement. He retreats into the olive gloom, swallowed by branches that barely shiver. Alberic waits until the green cloak is gone, then strolls over, casual as Sunday sin. Couldn't sleep, he asks, voice pitched for crickets and conspirators. Too many lullabies, you reply, nodding at the tower. He grins, pockets the now empty cloth. Trade, he says. Mother trades north, I trade south, balances the family budget. You ask what was in the box. Insurance, he says. Sometimes treaties need godparents. Green wax sponsors the christening. He doesn't ask you to forget. He assumes you will, the way Rome assumes sunrise. Inevitable, unworthy of mention. Then he's gone, soft-footed, leaving only the scent of crushed olives and the faint metallic aftertaste of a deal you weren't supposed to taste. Grounding. This is the Pornocracy's real currency. Parallel treaties, double receipts, promises printed on both sides of the parchment and held up to the light until the ink bleeds together. Marozia negotiates with Lombards. Alberic courts the Saracen emirates in the south, each hedging the other's bets. Rome becomes a marketplace where loyalty is sold by the ounce and bought back by the pound at a loss. Unusual detail, the scroll box Alberic carried is carved from a single piece of cedar taken from the roof beam of the old temple of Vesta. Touch it, and your fingers smell like hearth smoke for hours. Romans believe wood that once guarded sacred fire can carry clauses across borders without burning them. The Saracens, pragmatically, believe cedar repels moths. Both are right. Diplomacy is the art of agreeing on insects. Mystery, silver braid sniffed you out twice, first at mass, now in the dark. Either he has a bloodhound's nose for strangers, or the brooch is leaking scent like a candle leaks wax. If the phoenix emblem is recognized, your temporary invisibility ends. You become parchment, written on, folded, posted. Dawn finally commits, a thin blade of rose under the olive branches. Camp stirs, cooks cursing damp kindling, mules expressing operatic opinions, Lombards singing a hymn that accidentally matches the rhythm of the Roman night watch's marching song. Convergence, accidental or engineered, is Rome's favorite lullaby. Marozia emerges from her pavilion fully armored in silk, layers of diplomatic colors, white for truce, purple for threat, gold trim for bribery ready to wear. She spots you, lifts one eyebrow the way a merchant weighs coin, finds you still trustworthy enough not to kill. "Ride with me," she says, not a request, more a weather report. "Today you will be useful." The column reforms. Secundus greets you with a sigh that says, "I hope you learned something worth carrying." You mount. The mule farts, which passes for benediction. Wheels creak, hooves clop, the ambulant tower rolls, oxen lowing like basso profundo gossip. Destination, the village of Ad Pontum. Literally, at the bridge. A ford where the Tiber bends wide and shallow, perfect for photo ops involving peace, olive branches, and the implicit threat of drowning. By mid-morning the road narrows. Cypress give way to scrub oak, then to nothing. Flat river meadows misted with heat. Ahead, the bridge, a Roman relic half collapsed into stepping stones, water gurgling around broken arches like laughter through missing teeth. On the far bank, tents already dot the grass, Saracen colors, green and white, banners stitched with silver calligraphy that catches sun and throws it back as language you can't read but still understand. We are here, we are polite, we are dangerous. Your column halts mid-bridge. Symbolism demands symmetry. Lombards on one side, Saracens on the other, Romans in the middle holding the bag labeled future. Marozia climbs to the roof hatch of the ambulant tower. The wind catches her veil. For a moment she looks like a ship's figurehead carved from ambition. She raises both arms. Pearls click, conversation dies. "Peace," she announces, voice carrying like a well-aimed stone, "is a bridge that needs rebuilding every season. Today we lay the first plank." Cheers, polite and suspicious, ripple both riverbanks. A table is produced, folding walnut, inlaid with mother-of-pearl dolphins that have never seen the sea. Documents appear as if by magic. Quills sprout like daffodils. The air smells of ink, horse, and the metallic tang of anticipation sharpening knives. Alberic stands beside her, green sealed scroll now tucked beneath his belt like a dagger wearing parchment. Silver braid represents the Lombards, smiling the thin smile of a man who's already sold the bridge and is negotiating for the water beneath it. On the Saracen side, an emir's envoy, tall, turbaned, scent of orange blossom and oiled steel, unrolls a document written on silk so fine it floats above the table like a question mark. Translations fly back and forth, multilingual birds that occasionally collide and fall, stunned, into the river. Your job, hold the ink pot. That's it. Stand, steady the ceramic well of midnight blue pigment, try not to sneeze. But ink has weight. It pulls eyes, pulls thoughts, pulls history toward itself. Each time a quill dips, you feel the brooch twitch, recording signatures in heat against your skin. Treaty terms are read aloud. Latin, Lombard, Arabic, then back again, meanings shifting like colors in wet silk. Land boundaries, trade tolls, prisoner exchanges, marriage prospects, joint garrison rotations, and, almost as an afterthought, freedom of passage for merchants carrying aromatic resins and scholarly texts. Everyone nods. Everyone knows resins means frankincense and texts means maps of whoever's not in the room. Quills scratch. Wax drips. Seals are pressed. Marozia's phoenix, the Lombard wolf, the Saracen crescent. 3 worlds, 3 stamps, 1 bridge. Applause rises, genuine this time, because paper peace is lighter than war and easier to carry home. Then the Emir's envoy does something not on the program. He produces a 4th document, thin, cream, unadorned, and places it beside the treaties. A personal clause, he says, accent curling around Latin like smoke around a column. Between families, not states. Marozia's eyebrow arcs. Which families? Mine, he says, and the house that guards the bridge. He looks straight at Alberic. Silence drops, sudden and fragile as a dropped seal. Alberic's hand drifts to the green wax scroll at his belt. Silver Braid's fingers drum the table. The river gurgles on, indifferent to human cliff edges. The envoy unrolls the cream sheet, a marriage proposal. Alberic to the Emir's daughter, Safia, currently dwelling in Palermo, reputedly clever, reputedly rich, reputedly able to read Latin in a script so beautiful it makes bishops weep. Dowry, ships, silk, and a library complete with commentaries on Aristotle that don't yet exist in Europe. Price, 1 Roman prince willing to learn Arabic and remember birthdays. Marozia's smile is immediate, calculated, and slightly feral. She sees fleet timber floating toward her, sees scholars translating her propaganda into flowing Cufic, sees a grandson who can rule both olives and oranges. She turns to Alberic. He blinks, once, twice, caught between childhood and the jaws of his mother's ambition. Then the mask slides into place, teenage flirtation with destiny. He bows to the envoy, voice steady. I am honored to consider so luminous a match. Consider, not accept, lawyer's blood already cooling. But the cream parchment is pushed forward, quill presented. Alberic glances at Marozia. She nods, pearls counting profit. He signs. Ink dries faster under sun. The brooch on your arm flares so hot you fear it will brand the phoenix through your sleeve and onto your skin permanently. You steady the ink pot, heartbeat thudding against ceramic. Silver Braid signs as witness. Marozia signs. The envoy signs with a flourish that looks like a bird taking flight. 4 signatures, 4 futures, 1 bridge now wide enough to span the Mediterranean. Applause again, smaller, puzzled, but polite. Peace has been upgraded to dynasty. The Lombards mutter about balance. The Romans cheer because cheering is free. The Saracens smile the small smile of traders who just bought a harbor with a wedding. Documents are rolled, ribboned, distributed. Alberic tucks the cream marriage clause inside his green sealed scroll, treaty nesting inside treaty like swords inside scabbards inside lies. Silver Braid claims the olive branch copy, bows, retreats. The envoy remounts, salutes, rides eastward, already composing the letter that will fetch a bride in her library. Marozia descends the hatch. Camp breaks. Tents folded, fires doused, oxen convinced to lean into the traces. The bridge stands empty, mid-river breeze flapping the tablecloth like a flag that hasn't decided which country to surrender to. You stand in the middle of the planks, inkpot empty, brooch cooling against your pulse. Secundus nudges your shoulder, lesson over, miles to go, metaphors to feed. You mount. The column turns southeast, back toward Rome, carrying a prince newly betrothed to Sicily, a Lombard who smells secrets, and a woman who's just franchised her bloodline across 2 seas and 3 languages. Behind you, the river keeps laughing through broken arches, washing yesterday's treaties downstream toward the next city that thinks bridges are permanent. The road home always feels shorter, until it isn't. Rome shrinks behind every bend, then reappears larger, as if the city is breathing in your direction. The oxen smell it first, the sour promise of river, the bakery smog, the incense that clings to brick like a priest's perfume after 40 funerals. They lean forward, lowing in 4-part exhaustion. Secundus picks up the pace without permission. Even mules feel ancestral gravity when the walls come into view. But the walls aren't welcoming. They're crowded. People choke the gates. Merchants, monks, mothers, the usual gossip mongers, plus a new garnish, German voices, hard consonants clanking like cold iron in a language that thinks Latin is just dialect with delusions of warmth. Otto's envoys have arrived early, and Rome is trying on its best manners like a child forced into church clothes. Here's your grounding. Otto I, Duke of Saxony, King of East Francia, has decided the papacy needs adult supervision. He's not invading, yet. He's auditing. His representatives ride under a white banner with a black eagle that looks perpetually unimpressed. Their job: inspect Roman elections, count the bribes, and deliver a polite but non-negotiable memo. Next pope needs northern approval, Capis. Unusual detail: the lead envoy is a woman, Countess Gerberga, Otto's sister, 6 feet of diplomacy in chain-stitched silk. She carries a reliquary the size of a pine cone, alleged fragment of the true cross, sealed in crystal so clear you can see the wood grain and the price tag. Where she points, Romans kneel first, ask questions later. Even the goats seem to genuflect. Mystery: Gerberga's breath fogs the crystal whenever she passes a cardinal. Not when she passes laymen, only princes of the church. Romans swear the relic is testing for sin density. Scholars swear it's just weather. Either way, cardinals find reasons to stay upwind. The column halts outside the Milvian bridge. Marozia rides forward alone, pearls clicking a tempo even German horses recognize as do not mess. Gerberga dismounts. 2 women, 2 entourages, 1 bridge that remembers Constantine's vision and is quietly hoping for a sequel. Gerberga opens without preamble. Rome's sovereignty is fraying, Lady Senator. Saracens south, Magyars east, Lombards north, all sniffing blood in the Tiber. My brother offers. She pauses, lets the eagle banner snap in the wind, a needle and thread. Marozia smiles the way a knife smiles before it explains the rules. Rome is not a tier, Countess. It is a tapestry still being woven. Pull 1 thread and you may find it attached to your own cloak. Translation: help is welcome, supervision is negotiable, interference will be invoiced. Behind her, Alberic sits his pony, 1 hand on the green sealed scroll that now contains Sicily, a library, and his future wedding night. He's practicing the neutral face of a man who's just learned his mother-in-law will be an emir. Gerberga's breath fogs the crystal as she glances at him, cardinal by blood, future pope by dynasty. The relic stays clear. Apparently engagement to Islam does not count as sin until the vows are consummated in Latin. She turns back to Marozia. Election within the month, she states. Open conclave. Imperial observers. No family balconies, no armed attendants. My brother desires transparency. Romans nearby snicker. Transparency is what you call a window you can't open. Marozia inclines her head, gracious as a guillotine. We cherish clarity. You shall have it, in cathedrals, in documents, in whatever shape best fits imperial eyes. They part without embrace, without handshake, without sword drawn. Protocol satisfied, threat delivered, everyone's dignity still crease-free. But the air tastes of steel filings. Even the cypresses seem to sharpen their silhouettes. Inside the walls, the city has rearranged itself like furniture before a party you're not sure you want to attend. Streets are swept, mostly. Banners hang, straightish. Taverns post signs, no politics served after Vespers. Everyone knows the rule will last until the first jug of wine, then dissolve faster than altar bread on a guilty tongue. You ride toward the Lateran through a gauntlet of whispers. Germans want a pope who can hold a sword without cutting his own mitre. Countess carries Otto's ring in her glove, ready to slip it onto whichever finger raises the host first. Heard the Saracen bride is already on ship, bringing books bound in saffron leather. Hedgehog predicted it. Wouldn't eat yesterday, just stared at the Lateran door. At the palace gates, John X waits. He looks like a man who's been using his own candle at both ends, eyes hollow, beard uneven, pallium draped like a surrender flag. But his smile is real when he sees the mule. Animals that endure without complaint are his current role models. He raises a hand before questions form. Yes, the Germans are here. Yes, they've brought their own incense, smells like discipline. Yes, we shall oblige up to the point where obligation becomes strangulation. He notices the brooch warming your sleeve, raises an eyebrow. Still rising, he asks, you nod. Good, he says, we'll need the heat. Things are about to hatch. He leads you inside, past corridors now lined with unfamiliar guards, tall, fair, quietly horrified by Roman plumbing. In the chapel, the portable altar has been upgraded. Imperial craftsmen have added silver corners, each engraved with an eagle holding a cross in one claw and a sword in the other, subtle as a trumpet at bedtime. A new document lies open, Pactum Arteninum, Draft 1. It promises imperial protection, demands imperial oversight, and contains so many conditional clauses it reads like a labyrinth designed by a lawyer who's lost his own exit. John X must sign, eventually. First comes negotiation, prayer, and the traditional Roman pastime of finding loopholes wide enough to drive a siege tower through. You're assigned a new job, ink monitor. Again. But this ink is different, imported from Aachen, blacker than Roman pride, and it dries so fast it practically signs documents before quills touch them. Your task, keep it liquid. The imperial clerks warn that if it skins over, the entire negotiation might solidify with it. No pressure. Night settles. Torches in iron cages throw eagle-shaped shadows on the walls. Every flicker looks like wings advancing. Gerberga kneels in the side chapel, crystal reliquary on the altar, breath fogging rhythmically, clear. Fog, clear, fog, like a metronome counting down to an election no one can afford to lose. Marozia retires to her city palace, pearls clicking a lullaby for Rome's restless eyelids. Alberic disappears, last seen heading toward the stables, green sealed scroll tucked under his arm, wedding plans glowing softly through the wax. John X dismisses everyone except you and the hedgehog. He pours 2 cups of wine, hands you one. To warmth, he toasts, touching his cup to the brooch. The phoenix steams, literally, tiny feathers of vapor rise, carrying the smell of cedar and somewhere far away, oranges. Outside, a German sentry changes watch. Armor clanks, language clangs, the city holds its breath. Inside, ink waits for your stirring hand, documents wait for signatures, futures wait for permission to exist. Rome is a candle with 3 wicks, Otto, Marozia, Saracen, Sicily. and you're holding the match that's already burning. The wine is sour, but the steam off the brooch is sweet. Cedar and orange blossom meeting somewhere above the cup like reluctant dance partners. John X watches the miniature cloud, eyes reflecting feathers of vapor that dissolve before they reach the rafters. Behind him, Spes the hedgehog sniffs the air, decides phoenix-flavored incense is above his pay grade, and waddles back to the portable altar to guard the leftover Eucharistic wafers. Apparently, sacred bread counts as furniture once it's been consecrated and surplus. Outside the chapel, German boots trade places with Roman sandals in rhythmic clacks, two languages of leather negotiating who guards whom. Every third sentence ends with Otto, pronounced the way you say, whether when you can't change it. Inside, the Pactum Arteninum lies open like a patient etherized upon a table, margins bleeding red annotations. Clause 4, who appoints the appointers. Clause 9, define neighboring threat without naming Magyars. Clause 12, hedgehog exemption. Someone tried to draft Spes as a papal defensive asset. John threatened to excommunicate the ink. Your job has evolved from ink monitor to ink therapist. Keep the archon pigment liquid, prevent it from sulking into a skin, and new today, stop it from eating the parchment. Imperial clerks failed to mention that fast-drying ink, left too long, bonds molecularly with sheep skin, creating a document you can amend only by amending the sheep. You stir gently, clockwise, the way you imagine time prefers to be stirred when it's being watched. John breaks the silence. Did you know, he says, voice soft enough not to disturb the eagles carved on the silver corners, that Otto's ring once belonged to Charlemagne. He rotates his own signet, the one Marozia borrowed and returned. Two circles, never meeting. One wants to rule the world, the other wants to survive it. Tonight they touch. He doesn't specify which circle he believes he occupies. A side door creaks. Gerberga enters alone, no retinue, the crystal reliquary cradled like a sleeping infant. She sets it on the altar, directly under the hanging lamp. The wood fragment inside remains clear, her breath, for once, does not fog. Instead, the crystal clouds when she looks at John, sin detector or weather station, the result is the same, cardinal pope by courtesy, target by fact. Your Holiness, she nods. Then, surprisingly to you, Phoenix. She knows the brooch. Otto's court invented it, gift for favored observers, a wearable passport that warms when truth is being told in its presence, burns when falsehood, a political lie detector you didn't know you were wearing. Your sleeve suddenly feels like judgment with a safety pin. Grounding, Otto's court thrives on symbolic tech. They issue scepters that unscrew into pens, crowns with secret compartments for seals, rings whose bezels spin to reveal different insignia, pragmatic jewelry for men who negotiate on horseback in the rain. The phoenix is their latest toy, diplomacy as wearable warmth. Unusual detail, the crystal only fogs for clerical sin, breaking vows, simony, heresy, or the special Roman blend of all three. Lay greed doesn't register. Apparently, guard audits by department. Mystery, why is Gerberga alone? Imperial protocol demands at least 2 witnesses for anything short of breakfast. Tonight she brings only the fragment of cross, and the confidence you won't murder her. Both fragile, both portable. She produces a single sheet, parchment so thin it's almost sinful, written on one side in Otto's own hand, large, blunt letters that look carved by a man who hits nails for practice. A personal codicil to the Pactum, article last. The See of Rome shall, upon the decease of the current Pontiff, entertain candidacies suitable to the empire. such suitability to be discerned by joint conclave of Roman clergy and imperial envoys. Unanimous consent deemed impossible. Therefore majority of living voters shall suffice, said majority to include the Empress if she be present. Translation: Otto picks the next pope, Rome gets a courtesy veto, and God gets an observer seat. John reads, lips moving slightly, tasting each clause the way you taste wine for poison. Ritual, not expectation. He sets the page down, aligns it with the larger document, angles the lamp so both are bathed in gold. Then he does something unexpected. He laughs. Not the dry papal chuckle you heard when Spes once bit a cardinal, but a full, surprised laugh, the kind that escapes when irony corners you and tickles. His Majesty wants to franchise salvation, he says, wiping his eyes. And I thought indulgences were bold. Gerberga doesn't smile. Refusal is possible but costly. My brother camps at Ravenna. 50,000 ounces of silver travel with him, gift for St. Peter's Basilica or subsidy for Roman defense, depending on vocabulary. She lets that settle, then adds, softer, also 50,000 men, depending on vocabulary. The brooch warms. Otto's offer is technically true, therefore technically honest, therefore technically acceptable. It burns against your skin like a mother reminding you to decide whose side the truth is on. John pours a third cup, pushes it toward her. She hesitates, imperial etiquette versus Roman hospitality, then drinks. For a moment the three of you form a quiet constellation, Pope, envoy, ink therapist, orbiting the same dark wine. Outside, a new sound, rain. Gentle, persistent German. It drums on the chapel roof, soft as moth wings, loud as deadlines. Somewhere a sentry curses, somewhere a mule sighs. Inside, ink waits, sheepskin waits, the future waits for someone to pick up the quill. John stands, lifts the lamp and sets it directly above the parchment. Light and shadow trade places. The eagle engravings look ready to fly off the silver corners and hunt. He dips the quill, hands it to you. Your turn, he says. Write the date. Let's give tomorrow a birthday. You write in Nomine Domini, Anno Domini DCCCCLXV, Mens Septembrio, Die Viro. The numbers feel like rungs on a ladder you can't see the top of. The ink dries almost before you finish, satisfied, territorial. Gerberga bows, takes the parchment, rolls it, slips it into a waterproof sleeve of oiled silk. Imperial Chancery by dawn, she says. Then to Rome, then to history. She pauses at the door, looks back. Keep the brooch warm, Phoenix. History catches cold easily. She leaves. Rain swallows her footsteps. John exhales, rubs his eyes, suddenly smaller without an empress to be watching. Well, he says to the hedgehog, we've rented the throne. Let's hope the interest doesn't kill us. Spes sniffs the parchment, finds no edible wafers, curls into a ball of silver quills and pessimism. John drains the last of the wine, sets the cup upside down, a Roman gesture against hubris, or maybe just against refills. Outside, the rain thickens, washing German dust into Roman gutters, mixing languages the way rivers mix silt. Inside, ink cools, brooch settles, candle gutters lower. You stare at the upside-down cup and wonder which drop contains the moment everything tips. John places a hand on your shoulder, light as absolution. Sleep, he says. Tomorrow we find out if God reads fine print. He exits, robes whispering along the stones, taking the lamp and leaving you the dark. Rain keeps counting seconds on the roof. The brooch rests, lukewarm now, against your pulse, neither accusing nor comforting, simply waiting for the next sentence to be spoken aloud so it can decide whether to burn or bless. In the chapel shadows, Parchment lies patient, ink already hardening into law. Somewhere across the wet city, Gerberga's boots splash toward the imperial hostel, each step a stitch sewing Rome into Otto's cloak. Somewhere else, palace, tower, riverbank, Marozia's pearls click a new arithmetic, 50,000 silver ounces, 50,000 men, 1 papal life, 0 room for error. You blow out the last candle. Smoke rises, ghost of a phoenix that hasn't decided whether to rise or simply smolder all night. Rain answers with its own grey language, tapping parchment thin against the roof, rehearsing the speech it will give the city by morning. New deals, old walls, wet feet, dry ink. Outside, Rome holds its breath. Inside, you listen to the echo of a quill that just signed tomorrow's weather. The brooch cools against your skin, satisfied for now, but you know warmth is only a lie away. The rain stops sometime between your second blink and your first dream. A Roman exit, no applause, just wet stones learning to reflect torchlight again. You wake on the chapel floor, cheek against parchment scrap, drool threatening to smudge a minor clause. Secundus the mule snores somewhere outside, a bass note to the city's thinner mutter. The brooch has gone cold, which feels less like peace and more like a phone left off the hook. John X is already gone, so is the treaty. Only the faintest echo of incense remains, hanging in the rafters like a ghost who's lost his boarding pass. You stretch, joints creaking like poorly oiled doctrine, and step into the corridor. Dawn light slants through arrow slits, painting white bars across the floor, an early draft of prison or protection depending which side you walk. A novice hovers, eyes wide enough to serve plates. "You're wanted," he whispers, as if Rome might overhear. "Lateran roof." Now, roof. You didn't know the Lateran had a roof, only layers of ceiling stacked like lies. You follow the boy up staircases that grow narrower and more philosophical until you emerge into open air, high above the city's morning breath. Wind slaps you awake. The view steals what's left of your sleep. John X stands at the parapet, pallium whipping like a flag trying to defect. Next to him, Gerberga, hair braided so tight it could slice bread. Between them, on a portable lectern, sits the treaty, sealed, ribboned, but hardly naked in sunlight. Below, in the piazza, a crowd has gathered, Romans, Lombards, German guards, 2 monks selling blessed chestnuts, and a goat wearing a blue ribbon, obviously hired for atmosphere. Gerberga speaks first, voice carried by wind and the natural amplifier of scandal. His Majesty Otto, ever solicitous for the peace of the Church, offers Rome a gift. She lifts the treaty. Protection, clarity, succession. She might as well have said surveillance, shackles, selection. Latin allows either flavor. Cheers ripple, mostly German. Romans mutter, exchanging coins and predictions. Marozia is nowhere visible, but her absence feels curated. Pearls are probably clicking in a shadow somewhere, counting votes before they're cast. John X raises a hand. The crowd hushes, more out of habit than reverence. He looks older than yesterday, which is saying something. The Church receives charity with gratitude, he says, charity here pronounced charade in ecclesiastical accent. And gratitude bears fruit, today a declaration. He nods to you. You realize, stomach dropping, that you are the declaration. The brooch flares, heart proud, traitorous. John gestures you forward. This witness, he says, loud enough for the goat to hear, carries the warmth of truth. He taps the phoenix. A sign where imperial care meets apostolic mission, new life rises. Translation, Otto gets the keys, John keeps the cross, you become the living logo of partnership. Useful, portable, disposable. Gerberga produces a second item, a circlet of gold. thin as a penance ring but wide enough to imply authority. Not a crown. Crowns are for kings. This is for popes who need reminding who paid for the gold. She holds it above John's head, not touching, letting sunlight do the heavy lifting. Gasps, applause, a few Roman throats clearing in moral indignation. John kneels, slowly, knees protesting like old theologians. The circlet descends, rests on his hair. No anointing, no anthem, just wind and the distant bleat of the goat who's suddenly the most neutral observer in Italy. Cheers erupt, German cheers measured, precise, already catalogued for the imperial archives. But the brooch is burning. Not warm, burning. You smell wool scorching. The phoenix branded into the metal glows orange, then white. Pain spikes up your arm. You clutch the sleeve, eyes watering. Gasps turn to shouts. The crowd parts like you're contagious. Gerberga steps back, crystal reliquary raised as shield. John steadies you, concern warring with choreography. This wasn't rehearsed. The circlet on his head begins to sweat, gold softening, running like honey. Not melting, moving, flowing down his temples, across his forehead, forming new letters, ovis, Latin for sheep, then shifting again, rearranging into overt. Before anyone can read the anagram, the gold cools, solid, innocent. But the message lingers, ghost written in everyone's mind, who is leading whom. You yank the brooch free. It hisses against damp stone, leaving a feather-shaped scorch mark on the parapet. The pain stops instantly, skin pink but unbroken. Silence stretches, elastic, ready to snap. Gerberga recovers first. Imperial training includes pretending miracles are Tuesday. A sign of divine favor, she declares, voice steady, warming the instrument of unity. Romans aren't convinced. Germans clap because clapping ends awkwardness. John rises, touches the circlet. Still gold, still his, still Otto's. His eyes meet yours, gratitude, apology, warning. Below, the goat tries to eat a chestnut wrapper and is chased by a monk. Normalcy reasserts itself, threadbare but serviceable. Grounding, the circlet incident will be recorded as celestial confirmation in imperial annals, as metallurgical hiccup in Roman gossip. Historians will blame impure alloy, summer heat, or pious hysteria. No one will mention the brooch. Souvenirs have a way of disappearing when the story solidifies. Unusual detail, the scorch mark on the parapet remains. Rain doesn't fade it, scrubbing doesn't shift it. Pilgrims will claim it smells like myrrh on hot days. Children will trace the outline for luck before exams. Cardinals will walk past quickly, muttering about branding. Mystery, who wrote the words? Otto's goldsmiths swear the circlet bore only the eagle and the cross. The brooch was Otto's gift, but Phoenix iconography is older, Roman, maybe Egyptian, maybe something that flew in before borders hardened. A message from the metal itself. From whatever watches when treaties are signed on rooftops. Or from Rome, city of talking statues, reminding everyone that gold can be relettered as easily as history can be re-inked. John dismisses the crowd with a blessing. Germans file out in orderly rows. Romans swirl like uncertain bathwater. Gerberga lingers long enough to study the scorch, expression unreadable. Interesting climate, she murmurs, then follows her escort down the stairs, boots counting possibilities. The roof empties. Wind returns to private practice. John removes the circlet, turns it in his hands. Sheep, he says quietly, or overture, depends which way you read the music. He offers it to you. Keep it warm, Phoenix. Metal remembers who held it when it changed its mind. You accept. The gold is cool now, blameless. He gestures toward the city sprawling below, wet, glittering, muttering. Somewhere down there, a conclave is already assembling in whispered pieces. Otto has his candidate, Marozia has hers, the Saracens have ships, the Lombards have grudges, and the hedgehog has fleas. He smiles, tired, fond. Try to be in the right room when the doors lock. He descends, robes whispering politics against stone. You stay, circlet in hand, brooch cooling at your belt, city breathing beneath like an animal that's learned to pretend it's tame. Below, bells begin, first one, then another, then a scatter, as if each church is clearing its throat before the real song. Somewhere a pearl clicks once, Marozia, counting. Somewhere a goat bleats, neutral for now. Somewhere a quill is dipped, ready to write the next sentence across the skin of a city that's running out of blank space. You look at the scorch mark, feather-shaped, permanent, and realize the match has been struck, the brand applied. The next pope will carry this shape somewhere on his conscience, whether he sees it or not. The wind shifts, carrying river smell, incense smoke, and the faintest trace of oranges from a ship that hasn't docked yet. You tuck the circlet inside your cloak, pocket the brooch, and start down the stairs. Rome is already rehearsing tomorrow's headlines. You're just the walking footnote that got warm enough to notice. The stairs descend like a sermon that refuses to end. Each step a minor penance, each landing a pause for dramatic effect. By the time you reach ground level, the circlet has cooled against your ribs, but the feather-shaped scorch on the parapet is still burning in your mind's eye, a glowing cursor waiting for the next line of history to be typed across the sky. Corridors funnel you toward the Lateran-side portico, where morning has set up a pop-up market of whispers. Did you see the gold move? Did you smell the miracle? Did the goat predict it? The goat is now being offered chestnuts in exchange for prophecies. Business is brisk. You push through the throng and step into the open courtyard. The air tastes of wet marble and overheated expectation. A messenger pigeon lands on the fountain rim, flips you a dismissive tail feather, and hops toward a tray of millet someone has thoughtfully labeled diplomacy. Do not eat. Birds here know which crumbs carry clauses. Marozia appears from an archway as if conjured by collective anxiety. Pearls click, veil lowered, eyes calculating wind speed and mortal fallout. She raises one finger, traffic stops, pigeons pause mid-peck. Walk, she says, falling into step beside you. Not a request, gravity accepts it as new coordinates. You fall in. The circlet presses against your cloak like a second heartbeat trying to learn the rhythm. She doesn't ask if you're wearing it. She knows weight the way sailors know weather. Nice climate up there, she murmurs. Gold softens, truth hardens, witnesses get warm. She sighed, eyes the brooch. You've been branded useful. Try not to blister. We reach a quiet cloister, arcade on one side, herb garden on the other, the smell of rosemary strong enough to season any story. She stops beside a rosemary bush shaped like a throne by gardeners who have clearly been encouraged to anthropomorphize. Sit, she says. The bush is too small, so you stand. She sits, on air, on confidence, on the invisible chair of being Marozia. The pearls give a satisfied clack. Grounding, the conclave is assembling in pieces. Cardinals within riding distance have been summoned. Those outside it are receiving politely urgent letters bearing more seals than a fisherman's convention. Otto wants a pope he can work with. Marozia wants one she can work through. The Roman citizens want one who won't raise taxes on fish. Consensus is a unicorn grazing in the distance. Unusual detail, rosemary in Rome is nicknamed potpourri plant because it remembers who touched it. Stroke the leaves and the scent lingers in fingerprints for hours. Gardeners claim they can identify the last 3 people who handled a sprig. Right now, the bush smells of Marozia, lavender ambition, the gardener garlic breakfast, and faintly, of incense and German wool. Gerberga has been here, maybe tasting the herbs the way you taste atmosphere before battle. Mystery, someone has been pruning the rosemary into the shape of a key. New growth hasn't covered the cuts. The silhouette is recent. A literal key, a symbolic one. Or a reminder that gardens can be lark picks if you speak the language of leaves. Marozia produces a sprig, rolls it between finger and thumb. Scent explodes, sun warmed, sharp, nostalgic for memories you haven't lived. We need a candidate, she says. One the Germans won't fear, the Romans won't loathe, and I won't have to marry. She smiles at the joke. Rome laughs along nervously. She lists options on her fingers, Cardinal Pietro elderly, blind, smells of damp parchment. Advantage can be guided by anyone promising daylight. Disadvantage might die mid-ceremony, creating encore chaos. Cardinal Stefano Young, handsome, preaches in rhyming couplets. Advantage, crowd pleaser. Disadvantage, pleases other things too. Rumor claims he's baptized more bastards than sins. Cardinal Leone administrator, abacus for a heart. Advantage, understands budgets. Disadvantage, understands everyone's budgets, including several that should be dark. She pauses at 4, looks at you. And then there's the optional you. You nearly drop the circlet. I'm not even ordained. Details, she says, waving rosemary like a censer. Rome once elected a layman because his voice carried across the forum. We can ordain you by lunchtime, crown you by dinner, have you canonized by breakfast if the receipts look holy. She's half joking, half is enough to drown in. The brooch warms, truth or dare, you blurt. I don't want to be pope. She inhales the rosemary, exhales approval. Good. Wanting it disqualifies you. The Germans want humility they can direct. Romans want ambition they can leash. You're a stray thread. Tie the right knots, you become the rope. She stands, brushing invisible dirt from skirts that have never touched soil. Think. Pray or fake both convincingly. Conclave doors lock at sunset. She walks away, pearls clicking rosary-like, counting possibilities. You sit, this time actually on a stone bench, rosemary brushing your shoulder like a cat that knows secrets. The circlet in your cloak feels heavier, as if it's absorbing choices. You take it out, set it on your knee. Gold catches sunlight, throws tiny eagles across the flagstones. The inner rim bears new scratches, letters formed during the rooftop moment, overt on one side, ovis on the other. Turn it slowly, and the words merge into VIS, Latin for power or force or sea, a riddle in a circle. Footsteps approach, soft, devious. Alberic, minus armor, plus the green sealed scroll tucked under his tunic like a promise whispering to his ribs. He flops beside you, steals the circlet, spins it on his finger. Mother offer you the keys to heaven yet? He asks. She starts with heaven, moves to earth, ends with the cellar if necessary. You tell him you declined the cellar. He laughs, returns the circlet. Smart. Cellars have low ceilings and unexpected daggers. He taps the scroll. I, meanwhile, have acquired ships, books, and a bride who can quote Aristotle in 3 languages. All I need is a brother on the throne, and the Mediterranean becomes a family pond. He winks, but the wink is tired around the edges. Teenage swagger stretched over adult scaffolding. You ask which brother he has in mind. Whichever one says yes and survives the anointing, he says. Survival is elective. Ambition is hereditary. He stands, stretches, plucks a sprig of rosemary, tucks it behind your ear. For remembrance, he says, and for plausible deniability, Gardeners swear the bush remembers who sat longest. He strolls off, whistling a Lombard love song off key enough to be Roman. The circlet on your knee cools, scented faintly with herb and teenage prophecy. Alone again, you listen to the city preparing, bells practicing scales, pigeons rehearsing flight paths, cardinals updating wills. Somewhere a scribe runs out of parchment and starts writing on the back of old indulgences, recycling salvation for the sake of urgency. The rosemary bush rustles though no wind stirs. You stroke a leaf, scent clings to your fingerprint like a password. On impulse, you press the finger to the inner rim of the circlet, transferring oil and aroma. Gold drinks it in, the scratch marks darken, and for a heartbeat the metal feels alive, herb-fed, sun-warmed, waiting to see whose head will complete the circuit. Sunset is a few hours off. Conclave doors will close, keys will turn, votes will be counted in whispers thick enough to chew. You have time, just enough, to decide whether you want to be inside the circle or holding it. You tuck the circlet back under your cloak. The brooch pulses once, warm, not burning, like a heartbeat acknowledging another. Rosemary scent follows you down the cloister, through the arch, into the widening roar of a city rehearsing its next act. Behind you, the bush trembles, remembering everything, the countess's breath, the prince's whistle, your fingerprint gold-plated into power. Somewhere Marozia's pearls click, counting down. Somewhere a goat bleats, predicting nothing, confirming everything. Rome leans closer, breath minted with urgency, and asks, politely, dangerously, whose head, whose story, whose scent will tomorrow remember? You walk on, carrying the warm ghost of a circle that hasn't decided whether it's a crown or a target. Rome asks its question all the way to dusk, then stops asking and starts locking doors. Conclave begins at twilight, not inside the Sistine, which doesn't exist yet, but in the old Lateran banquet hall, a barn-sized rectangle famous for mosaics that peel like sun-burnt shoulders and acoustics that turn every whisper into gossip choir. Benches have been pushed into a horseshoe. A single brazier coughs out pine-scented heat and the occasional theatrical spark. No windows. Romans believe night air carries bribes. One door, two keys, one held by the city prefect, one by the dean of cardinals. Both must turn simultaneously, a choreography designed to stop either side stealing the lock. You are inside. Don't ask how. The rosemary on your fingerprint turned out to be a skeleton key. Master of the ink, they called you, and ink earns a chair at the fringe, close enough to refill quills, far enough to miss the dagger. The circlet rides your left arm under the sleeve, bent like a golden elbow trying not to attract elbows. The brooch is warm again, low, steady, cat on lap warmth, happy to be home. Cardinals file in, 16 of them, robes rustling like nervous libraries. Their names blur into job descriptions. The one who smells of fish, the one who speaks only in subordinate clauses, the one who keeps licking his lips as if tasting the air for heresy. Gerberga sits behind the prefect's chair, not inside the horseshoe, imperial observer, voice but no vote, crystal reliquary on her lap like a tiny transparent jail for sin. The crystal fogs the moment a cardinal clears his throat. By the time everyone is seated, the room looks like it's been cooking cardinals in its own juice. Grounding, papal elections in 965 are equal parts liturgy, livestock auction, and chess, played with living bishops. Canon law demands a 2/3 majority. Roman tradition demands survival past dinner. Outsiders think the Holy Spirit decides. Insiders know the spirit like a well-organized list of incentives. Unusual detail. Each prelate carries a conclave candle, personal wax stick marked with his coat of arms. When the final vote is cast, the candles are melted together into a single taper for the new Pope's first Mass, symbolizing unity. In practice, it's also a handy way to destroy embarrassing seals midstream. Nothing says humility like molten evidence. Mystery. Someone has replaced the communal wick with a length of quick match, the slow burn cord used in Greek fire. It won't explode, probably, but it will burn fast, hot, and leave very little forensic wax. A unity candle that devours itself, either poetic or prophetic, depending on survival rates. Marozia is absent officially. Unofficially, her pearls are clicking against the outside of the north wall, audible through a ventilation slit, every time someone says majority. She's brought her own chair, a folding stool placed exactly where the acoustics carry votes outward like carrier pigeons. Romans call it the balcony without masonry. Cardinals call it that damn draft. John X opens with prayer Latin, beautiful, tired. He mentions unity 6 times, humility 4, finances once, audible gasp. Then he sits, abdicating the chair of presider to become simply another terrified voter. The dean takes over, announces rules. No writing to outsiders, inkpot officially confiscated from you, but 4 hidden quills are already trembling in sleeves. No food from outside, kitchens staffed by Germans this week. Culinary surveillance. No leaving until someone hits 2/3. He omits no murder. Everyone notices the omission. First ballot, scraps of parchment dropped into a silver chalice swiped from the mass kit. You stir the ink nobody is allowed to use, pretending usefulness. Names emerge. Leone the abacus, 5 votes. Promises balanced books, balanced souls, balanced bribes. Stefano the rhymester, 4 votes. Campaigns in couplets, loses 1 vote when a couplet accidentally rhymes simony with darmine. Pietro, the damp parchment, 3 votes. Platform, early bedtime for Rome. Alberic, 2 votes. Written in youthful hand, probably his own. Wildcard, Phoenix, 2 votes. Your name written in Greek letters, 1 in Stefano's flowery script, 1 in handwriting so cautious it might be guards. The brooch spikes, heart, surprised, flattered. You nearly drop the ink pot. 2 cardinals think not being ordained is a curriculum vitae. Either they're gambling on novelty or they've mistaken symbolism for eligibility. Either way, the quick match wick is listening. Second ballot maneuvering. Alliances form like clouds, temporary shifting, ready to rain on someone. Voices rise. Leone will mortgage the Lateran roof. Stefano will sermon us to death. Pietro will die before Easter. Do you want another funeral tax? The boy Alberic has time to grow and time to betray. Phoenix is fresh. Phoenix is fiction. We'd be electing a parable. Parables can't sin. Think of the savings. Laughter, tension, the smell of wool beginning to singe from nerves. The brazier pops. A spark lands on Stefano's sleeve. He beats it out while improvising a rhyme about hell being poorly ventilated. 1 vote switches to Phoenix out of pure amusement. Count Leone 4, Stefano 3, Pietro 2, Alberic 1, Phoenix 3. The room realizes deadlock is a mirror and the mirror is cracking. Evening crawls in. Bread arrives, dense, German, theological. Water is measured, no wine till victory. Sober popes are less negotiable. Candles gutter. The quick match wick listens like a fuse enjoying gossip. Gerberger's crystal fogs continuously now, creating the impression that cardinals are being steamed for easier consumption. Marozia's pearls click, 1, 2, through the slit. You hear her voice, soft as reputation, break the lock, bird, fly or fry. Third ballot, desperation dresses as inspiration. Someone proposes a compromise, elect the idea of Phoenix, symbolic Pontiff, you the visible placeholder, real governance handled by a committee of 3 cardinals rotating monthly. A papacy training wheels, holiness by delegation, heresy light but intriguing. Votes shift like dune sand, Phoenix symbolic 6 Leone 4 Pietro 2 Stefano 1, he votes for himself in rhyme, even he doesn't believe it. 1 vote short of 2/3. The room holds its breath, smells smoke, realizes it's not metaphor. Leone stands, clears throat, adjusts abacus heart. Brothers, we seek humility. I withdraw. Shock, an accountant refusing promotion. He crosses to your chair, places his candle in your hand. Let the stranger carry our unity. I will guide the coin, he will carry the keys. Translation, he becomes finance minister, you become figurehead. Actual power stays numerical. Votes avalanche, 10 for symbolic Phoenix, 2 holdouts for Stefano, poetic principle, 1 for Pietro, asleep, 1 abstains, hungry. The dean declares consensus, voice shaking with relief and incipient smoke inhalation. Cheers. Tentative, confused, but loud enough to pass loyalty. John X closes his eyes, unsure whether to thank God or file an appeal. Gerberger's crystal clears for the first time all night, papal sin level reset to factory settings. They turn to you. 16 faces, candle glow, expectation thick as incense. The dean speaks. Do you accept the office of Bishop of Rome, Vicar of Christ, Supreme Pontiff, servant of the servants of God? The brooch burns, white heat, branding iron certainty. Words come out without consultation. I accept. Conditionally. Gasps. Popes don't negotiate, they submit. But you're not a pope, you're a placeholder with scarred skin. Condition, 1 year, then real election, open field. I will hold the keys, not the chains. Silence, shock, evaluation, maths. Leone nods first, finance loves deadlines. Others follow slowly, like dominoes that read fine print. The dean exhales. Granted. 1 canonical year, then conclave anew. Immediate relief, immediate dread. You've just invented the limited edition papacy. Collectible, expires, may contain traces of heresy. The quick match wick is lit. Candles tilt toward it like spectators. Wax rivers merge. 16 coats of arms dissolve into 1 streaky, multicolored column. Unity achieved by obliteration. Very Roman. The new candle is presented to you. Still soft, still warm, smelling of every ego in the room. You hold it, hand trembling, phoenix-shaped scorch on the parapet suddenly personal. John X approaches, places hands on your shoulders. What name? He asks softly. Name. You look at the circlet hidden under your sleeve, at the brooch cooling from white to rose, at the door where 2 keys wait to lock you into history. The city holds its breath beyond the wall, even the pearls outside pause. Call me, you begin, tasting futures. Paschal. The passage, not the palace. 1 year, then we pass the light onward. Paschal I, temporary, transitional, already ticking. The dean announces it. Bells outside pick up the name and throw it across rooftops. Romans repeat it. Tasting novelty, uncertainty, possibility. Paschal, almost Passover, almost passage, almost pass. A pope named for walking through, not for staying. Gerberger bows, crystal fogging once, clerical sin level already rising. She whispers, 1 year, Holy Father, Make it count. Keys turn in the door, simultaneous final. The lock clicks like a full stop at the end of a sentence you now have to live inside. Conclave ends. Paschal begins. The candle in your hand is still warm, still soft, still carrying 16 ambitions in its wax. You raise it, blessing the room, blessing the year, blessing the exit you'll need to find 12 months from now. Outside, Rome exhales, half cheer, half sigh, then starts preparing the next act. Marozia's pearls click once. Approval, amendment, countdown. Somewhere a goat bleats, predicting nothing, confirming everything. You stand, candle high, brooch cool, circlet heavy under cloth, wondering how long a year lasts when it's measured in melted egos, and the city mutters your temporary name like a prayer it hasn't decided to keep. The year dissolves the way cheap parchment does, one humid day at a time. You learn to wear the pallium like a seat belt, tight across the chest, never comfortable, always reassuring when the carriage hits potholes. The circlet bends itself into a more circular shape, then quietly unbends again, metal remembering it once had opinions. The brooch sleeps against your sternum, lukewarm, occasionally dreaming in sparks when someone near you tells a bald-faced lie during an audience. You schedule more audiences. Rome finds it entertaining. Paschal eye, temporary, transitional, still ticking, becomes a surprisingly durable rumor. You issue bulls limiting simony, popular, bulls limiting taxes on fish, very popular, and one bull limiting bulls, which the Chancery files under ironic obedience. Leone counts money and smiles the small smile of a man whose columns finally balance. Stefano rhymes homilies and accidentally invents the limerick 5 centuries early. Pietro dozes in committee and wakes only to vote yes on anything that includes the word bedtime. Alberic sails south with spring winds, scroll safe, wedding imminent. The Mediterranean ripples like a cat stretching, ready to be petted by dynasties. Marozia keeps to the shadows, pearls clicking lullabies for plans that now include a pope who can read Greek and remembers to leave the door unlocked during private meetings. She never asks for favors. She positions them, like furniture you suddenly realize you've been walking around your entire life. Otto camps at Ravenna, polite as a blade in a silk scabbard. Letters arrive scented with horse sweat and diplomacy. How fares the church? Does the city need grain? Would the Holy Father care to dedicate a new basilica just outside Ravenna, purely spiritual, absolutely no troops inside, unless you count choir boys with good posture? You reply with equal courtesy, equal evasion, equal stationary. Ink flows north, silver flows south. The Tiber carries both without comment. The quick-match conclave candle, now relegated to a shelf in the sacristy, waits its turn like a stage hand who knows the final act needs lighting. Sometimes you pass it at dusk and feel it watching, wick patient, wax remembering the heat of 16 egos. 1 year, you told it. 1 year only. It nods, flameless, agreeable, unblinking. Rome mutters your name in markets, paschal, short-term, long odds pass the wine. Children chant it skipping rope. The rhythm fits, so they own it. You don't correct them. Popes are public property like fountains and gossip. Seasons rotate, olives harvested, Tiber flooding just enough to remind everyone who really owns the architecture. Chestnuts replaced by roasted artichokes, then by early strawberries that taste like red promises. The goat with the blue ribbon achieves minor celebrity, appears in mosaics labeled testes fidelis, faithful witness, though no one can agree what it witnessed. It accepts nuts and reverence with equal dignity. One humid evening you escape the palace, stroll the riverbank in plain cloak, Secundus trailing like a bored bodyguard. The mule has been promoted to papal equerry, title invented to keep him from biting visitors. He now bites only on theological grounds. He dislikes Nestorians. Moonlight unrolls across the water, silver foil on brown soup. Rowing boats creak, lanterns swing, someone plucks a lute badly but sincerely. Rome exhales, less mutter, more lullaby. You reach the spot where you once dropped the decoy treaty. Nothing marks it, water never keeps receipts. But the brooch flares, gentle, nostalgic. Secundus sniffs the air, sneezes in approval. You sit on the same slippery steps. The city above is a glittering scab of lights, every window a candle someone thinks is private. Somewhere Marozia is counting, Otto is weighing, Alberic is sailing, Leone is balancing, Stefano is rhyming, Pietro is dozing, the goat is witnessing, the quick match is waiting. You take the circlet from under your cloak. Gold catches moonlight, throws it back as a thin ring you could wear on a finger if fingers were years. Inside, the scratches still raid ovis overt vis, but they've begun to fade, skin thin, as if the metal is forgiving itself. You turn it slowly. The letters blur into a single line I saw. A confession or a boast. You press the warm brooch against the inner rim. The phoenix absorbs moonlight, glows soft enough to read by. No message, no miracle. Just acknowledgement, still here, still passing through. A boat drifts past, lantern low. The rower nods, unaware he's sharing the river with a temporary pope. You raise the circlet in silent toast. He salutes with an oar. Rome keeps moving, water keeps moving, time keeps moving, all agreeing without words that 1 year is almost enough. Footsteps behind you, soft, certain. You don't turn. The scent of lavender and ambition arrives before the person. Marozia settles beside you, pearls muted for once, clicking only when she breathes. For a long moment neither speaks. The river handles conversation, syllables of slap and hush. She breaks it gently. Sunset tomorrow, the year is done. Conclave reopens, keys turn, locks fall off. Ready to be a layman again. You shrug. The cloak feels lighter already. Ready to be anonymous. Lay is optional. She smiles, moon turning her veil to frost. You've been useful, surprisingly light luggage. A compliment Roman style, portable, polished, potentially retractable. You ask what happens next. Same as always, she says, only faster. She sketches the future in quiet sentences. Otto will propose a candidate, German, amenable, breathes through nose. Roman cardinals will counter Italian, ambulatory, owns own quills. She will float a compromise. Someone tall enough to see over Alps, flexible enough to bow, related enough to count as family business. If elected, he will owe her. If he owes her, Rome keeps breathing. And you, she finishes, will walk away clean. That was the bargain. 1 year, no chains, no tomb. The brooch flares, warm, honest, confirming truth or at least her belief in it. You believe enough to relax. Secundus yawns, lies down, ready to resign commission back to ordinary biting. Marozia stands, brushes river spray from sleeves. Bring the circlet tomorrow. Let it crown the next victim. Metal enjoys variety. She steps away, pearls beginning their nightly count, then pauses, half-turn. For what it's worth, she says, voice low enough to be almost human, Rome will miss you. We don't like our threads color fast. We like them passing through, leaving just enough dye to remember the pattern. She disappears into shadow, lavender lingering like an afterthought. You sit a little longer. Moon climbs, thin as a wafer you once placed beneath a chalice that turned gold into words. The river keeps laughing at its own jokes, repeating them in ripples. You slip the circlet into the brooch pin, hooking phoenix wings through golden rim, makes a quiet chime, a private full stop. 1 object, 1 year, 1 ending. Tomorrow the lock clicks open, the quick match candle will be lit again. Someone else will melt into unity while you unmelt into crowd. Tonight, you are simply a figure on moonlit steps, breathing city air that tastes of almost finished stories. You stand, scratch Secundus behind the ears, start back toward palace lights that suddenly seem less like prison bars and more like porch lamps left on for a guest who's free to leave. Behind you, the Tiber keeps flowing, carrying treaties, figs, orange blossom, goat predictions, temporary popes, and the faint, stubborn scent of rosemary that refuses to be anything but green. Tomorrow conclave reopens. Tonight moonlight on the river is enough. 1 year complete. Still warm, still passing through. Paschal, the passer-by, signs off with footsteps that don't echo longer than they should. The city mutters your name one last time, softly, almost fondly, then turns the page. The page turns, but the paper is parchment, thick, reluctant, whispering as it folds. Tomorrow is already being written in side rooms, Otto's envoys sharpening clauses, Marozia pouring ink into new molds, cardinals rehearsing smiles that fit the next face. Tonight, though, the city grants you an intermission. You walk back through gates that no longer feel like jaws, Secundus clip, clapping a lazy rhythm that says off-duty. Somewhere a night watchman salutes with a torch. You return the gesture, forgetting you're still wearing the pallium. White wool stripe flickering across your shoulders like a comet that's decided to retire. Inside the palace, the corridors have been tidied for the next tenant. Carpets beaten, hedges clipped, sins dusted into corners where they'll wait politely. Your chamber is bare except for 3 objects on the table. The quick match candle. Now fully solidified, 16 colors swirled into one, smelling of everyone's best intentions. A small cedar box, lid carved with a phoenix, note underneath in Marozia's economical handwriting for the river if you choose. Or for memory if you don't. A plain traveling cloak, homespun, undyed, sized to disappear. You understand the offer, leave the garments, keep the year, walk out a stranger. You fold the pallium, place the circlet inside the crease, set the brooch on top, gold nesting with gold, warm metal cooling like a kettle taken off the fire. The candle you keep, someone should remember the smell of unified ambition. You close the lid, slip the box into the travel cloak's inner pocket. Light enough to carry, small enough to forget, heavy enough to matter. Secundus eyes the cloak, calculates the diminished probability of further oats, sighs in mule philosophy. All possessions eventually fit in a box. You scratch his ears, promise him early retirement in a meadow outside the city gates where no one quotes Aristotle and grass doesn't require documentation. Dawn is a pale line over the roofs when you step into the street. No bells yet. Rome is saving its voice for the next performance. You pass the baker who once tried to sell you charcoal flatbread. He offers a fresh roll, refuses payment, mutters grazy. Santita then catches himself, shrugs, or whoever you are. The roll is warm, tastes of ordinary Tuesday, no incense, no politics. At the river you pause. The Tiber is the color of strong tea and old secrets, moving with the confidence of water that has seen every possible ending and prefers the ones that keep flowing. You take the cedar box, hesitate, then open it. The candle slides out smooth as a confession. You hold it over the water. Memory or river? You choose both. You snap the candle in half, quick match crack like a small bone of history. One half you keep, pocketed with the rosemary leaf that's still fragrant in your cuff. The other half you drop. The current swallows it, carries the blended wax of 16 egos toward the sea, where it will cool, harden, maybe wash up on some distant shore as a curiosity no one recognizes. The cedar box you keep for letters or for bread or for nothing. It smells of ships and libraries and weddings that haven't happened yet. You tuck it away. Secundus follows without rope. Freedom suits both of you. The gate guard glances up, sees plain cloak, sees mule, sees no regalia, waves you through. Just another early traveler leaving before traffic. Outside the walls the road widens, dust soft, cypresses pointing the way to everywhere. You walk. Behind you, Rome wakes. Bells find their voices, cardinals straighten fresher robes. Otto's envoys check their lists. Marozia's pearls click a new arithmetic. Inside the Lateran, a quick match candle will be lit again. A new name will be measured for a crown that still bears the ghost outline of Ovis overt vis. The city will choose, survive, scheme, flourish, collapse, rebuild. Everything it has always done. Everything it will do long after your footprints have been wind-swept. You do not look back. Looking back is for stories, not for travelers. The road ahead smells of dew, rosemary, and the faint orange blossom scent of a library sailing toward a wedding. Somewhere between Rome and the horizon, the Tiber bends, carrying half a candle toward salt water, carrying treaties, rhymes, pearls, goat predictions, temporary popes, and the memory of a year that refused to become a tomb. You walk. The brooch is cool against your ribs, the half-candle safe in your pocket, the circlet a circle no longer around your head, but inside a box that might one day hold bread, or letters, or nothing at all. Secundus keeps pace, ears flicking at stories only mules bother to remember. Rome shrinks to a smudge of terracotta, then to a line, then to a thought you can turn over in your pocket like a smooth stone. The thought tastes of incense and river, of gold that once wrote ISAW, of rosemary that remembers your fingerprint. Eventually, you will reach another city, another river, another story. Eventually, you will tell this one around a fire, or to a child, or to the inside of your own skull on sleep.